And the slut-seeking missile? I'd love to see that. Do you have that around here?
You are so smart.
Yeah, you think so?
Is that how you got into the Mississippi Institute of Technology?
You know, I wish I never went into that closet with you.
I was very happy drinking and crying by myself.
I so regret trying to kiss you.
I would kiss the guy in the yacht 100 times before I kiss you. Moving on.
Yeah. Hashtag out of context quote.
Oh, wow. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Science Fiction Remnant. I am not Lady Lisa.
Thank
I
God.
am your host, Robert.
I thought you were going to say you're Cupid. Oh, dear. And I'm that Australian dude who likes to quote science a lot. You're mad retro gamer scientist Ray.
And it seems that we are on the roll here because we're going chaosless again.
Yeah, he's still up country visiting his grandma.
Yeah,
Must be exciting.
enjoying the heat and lack of Wi-Fi.
And electricity in some situations.
I should start with that.
Who needs electricity? I mean,
yeah, you can be fine with a nice air conditioning and Wi-Fi without electricity, right?
Yeah. And of course, because he's not here, we're doing happy-go-lucky movies.
Yeah, we're taking advantage. What do they say when the cat is not in? The mouse.
Play. Yeah, and we've been playing retro games, in fact. But before we get on to that, what have you been watching, Robert?
Oh, I guess I'm continuing. I finally watched the last episode of Dan the Dan. I know you mentioned that in our previous episode that we recorded.
So good.
Oh my God, yes. And if you don't know what that is, just go into Netflix if you're in the US. Look for Dan space Dan space, Dan space Da space Dan, and reach out to us and let us know what you think.
We have covered it already because it is so awesome. It's got one of the most amazing first episodes I've ever seen. 23 minutes of your life that you'll greatly be pleased about and never want back because it's so well written. But yeah, go back to our back catalogue and check that one out. It is well worth your time.
And if you want to hear our comments, just go down to our back catalog and find the Dan to Dan episode and download it and listen to it and let us know what you think. I rewatched. I love this movie. I don't know. We should cover it in here, and I don't know if this is one of the ones. I mean, have you watched it? Is Tomorrowland? It's a Disney movie.
Nope.
I really enjoy this film, and I think is for kind of like the same reasons why I love the film that we're covering today. Is the nostalgia factor. Disney has a few movies that they have created after their rides on not necessarily just the rides, but also the experiences within the Disneyland, Disney World parks. And this one is basically based on the Tomorrowland. And I'm not sure if they have it in Disneyland because I've never been, but they have it in Disney World. And I remember enjoying that area of the park. And to be honest with you, if you are a sci-fi fan, you have to enjoy that. It is like the coolest thing. This is all about tomorrow and what the scientific advances and all. It's pure sci-fi, basically. So this movie was based on that experience within the park, and I not only enjoy that. So I remember when that movie came out for the first time, I was so excited. Same thing happened to me when they did Pirates of the Caribbean, which was a ride that I used to enjoy. As a matter of fact, I still enjoy when I go to the parks. I just wait until the parade is going around, So since everybody's watching the parade, I would go into Pirates of the Caribbean and, go in and out, in and out, in and out, and just do it multiple times because there's very little wait. The lines are not as long. Um, so when the Pirates of the Caribbean came out, I remember being as excited as I was for Tomorrowland because it was a movie based on an experience within the Disney parks. So if you um, had the opportunity to go to any of the Disney parks, you probably will relate to my comments here. But yeah, Tomorrowland, Ray, if you never watched it, I'm kind of curious to see what your thoughts are on this movie. But it's one of those films that I rewatch. It's sci-fi and it's Disney.
Oh.
Uh, what's best for happy endings here than that?
Yes, let's keep it all nice and friendly and happy and cheery. Enjoy.
And that's all the sci-fi I watched this week.
Well, I'm doing a rewatch of Skeleton Knight in Another World. Now, obviously,
Oh,
it's heavy duty fantasy, but there is an underlying sci-fi premise because the guy got isekai'd as his character from an MMO. So his computer gaming character, who he'd forgotten that he made a skeleton underneath all his mythical OP armor, is causing him a few problems. Now he's been isekai'd as that character in Another World. There are a lot of stories out there at the moment in anime where a character from an MMO is isekai'd into Another World as the player is isekai'd as his character.
Demon Lord.
Overlord, How
Demon,
Not to Summon a Demon Lord Retry, Skeleton Knight in Another World. It's a very common trope, but it is kind of cool because
Yeah.
most of these hardcore gamers, they're complete antisocial. Well, just they just don't get along with other people, and then they have to get by in Another World. They've got no support system. They don't have the internet, or they can't order out for fast food or anything like that anymore. So they actually have to talk to people. So it's interesting seeing how they actually deal with it. But it's a cool premise. Still on the anime front because I'm an anime otaku. Gun Gale Online season 2. Obviously pretty good because it's got a season 2. It's a spin-off from Sword Art Online, which we have covered. It was actually Gun Gale Online was one of the arcs in season 2 of Sword Art Online, and then it got its own game with new characters. Oh, sorry, own game. It got its own anime with new characters, and now it's into season 2, and it's basically a futuristic shooter. So sort of post-apocalyptic shooter with lots of modern day weapons. So yeah, I find it very interesting, and it's full dive. So basically, you lie in your bed, you put the helmet on, and you are the person in the game. So it's very sci-fi, at least until I get it to work here, and then it'll be for real.
Hey, PlayStation, please. When? Take my money.
PlayStation 11. Got a ways to go. Shangri-La Frontier, again, another anime with the whole full dive aesthetic. They've left the mecha game that he was playing, and he's gone back to the actual Shangri-La Frontier game. So it's not quite as sci-fi as it was, but there's still sci-fi elements in that game. And I'm really enjoying that one. And I've been listening to the latest chapter that I've been working on my own novel, which is very sci-fi. And I've listened to that about 30 times because I'm trying to perfect it. But it's coming along. I'm hoping to have that novel finished within the next 6 months. So that will be cool.
Nice.
Maybe we'll cover it here.
Yeah. And we'll cover here. I want a signed copy.
You will get one.
Nice.
You will get one. I got to work out a cover to it.
Yeah, you should write some of the characters of this podcast into the book. That's an idea.
I have been taking requests from certain people. Who will remain nameless.
Awesome. Should we move on to the next segment?
Oh,
We are Science Fiction Remnant.
This is the Funny Science Fiction Podcast.
We are the Caribbean Science Fiction Network.
We are Monorats.
We are One Accord Level 2 Podcast.
This is Jesse from Sudden But Inevitable and Open Pike Night.
This is Sci-Fi.
And if you are new to the show, this is the segment where we cover the hashtag This is Sci-Fi. Because we wanted a place to join all the communities together, to have a mixed conversation about all types of IPs within one hashtag. And one of the reasons that I find is very important is because, I mean, it's very easy for you to go in there and find the hashtag for the IP that you follow, right? It's very, very important to find a hashtag where you are exposed to other sci-fi, because as sci-fi lovers, if you love that sci-fi as much as you do, that one thing that you love yourself, it is very likely that you will find another IP as good as the one you're actually following. So the hashtag This is Sci-Fi, what it does is it allows the fans, number one, to express their passion for their sci-fi, their sci-fi love, that one thing they love so much, and have other fans of sci-fi look at that passion, read through the lines, and maybe discover something new. Because there's nothing better than listening to a passionate comment about something you have never seen before, to be curious enough to watch it. Now, as a creator, it's also really good because it allows you to expose your creation more than just one cloud, and mostly like just the sci-fi community. And there's no one better than the creator that would have so much passion about their baby, that thing that they created so much. So yes, all you got to do is when you are posting about your favorite sci-fi, or when you're posting about that creation, that sci-fi creation that you did, could be anything, could be a podcast, could be a book, could be a movie, could be anything that is sci-fi related. All you got to do is add the hashtag This is Sci-Fi at the end of that post. And if you are a fan, all you got to do is look for the hashtag and follow it and join the conversations. I have found so many great friends, so many new things through the hashtag, and I'm glad that it is a thing now. Ray, do you have anything you'd like to add to that before we move on to the next segment?
Oh, I'm just scrolling through the website sciencedaily.com, which has all sorts of interesting things. And luckily enough, they divide it into sort of top stories and then stories to do with health and physics and environment. So you can actually scroll down through, and I should share my screen. That would make a whole lot of sense. There we go. So those who are watching on the video can see it. So this is Science Daily. No flashy pictures or anything like that. It's all text. And it's all just talking about everything that's new and beaut in science. So here we've got astronomers close to solving mystery of how the universe, giants, galaxies were formed. Mammoth as key food source in ancient Americans. Secret of our big brains might be in our gut. Yeah, I knew that. Chimpanzees perform same complex behaviors that have brought human success. So, chimpanzees are pretty damn close to humans. We have 94% similarity in genetics. And that's really interesting, actually, because apparently the genetic variance across the entire human species is about 6%. So some of us are closer to chimps than they are to our fellow humans. On percentage, okay? I'm not saying that people look like chimps.
Well, I don't know. I see some people, I see some people.
Mm,
So
mm, mm. Actually, there was an article that I only read the title of. I didn't get a chance to go into it, but I do know that the Chinese have been trying to make out that they actually are descended from Neanderthals, not Homo sapiens, because they just wanted to be different. And I did read just recently that they'd actually discovered a new human ancestor, like an offshoot, uh, in China, like from fossils. So maybe there's something to it. I don't know. So it's very interesting. It's very interesting. And of course, all of these sort of scientific discoveries and things, they're all colored by the opinions of the people doing the research. Oftentimes, science isn't done for science's sake. It's done to try and prove a point or to gain some sort of leverage or something like that. So remember when I say question everything?
yes,
Continue to question everything.
yes,
That's advice for the day. Question everything and check
right.
your sources.
Oh yes, that's very
One of
important.
which could be Science Daily. So there you go.
Awesome. Okay, so let's move on to the next segment.
Shut.
And since we are chaosless again on another episode,
His
we
grandma won't let him come home.
we want to play with something different. Me and Ray are going to do something different for this segment on this episode. Number one, I want to thank all of our YouTube subscribers for pressing that button. Thank you so very much. And I know I speak for the rest of the crew when I say this. For subscribing to our channel, it helps us a lot. You have no idea. If you are watching our show and haven't subscribed, I thank you for that as well. But if you want to do one more thing to help us out, just go ahead and press that subscribe button,
Pretty please.
please. And it makes it easier if you already listen, if you already watch our show. It makes it easier because you get notifications whenever anything new gets posted to our channel. And I also want to say, if you listen to our show on the pod, because we have a big subscriber base there too, do us a favor and go into that YouTube channel, find us and subscribe there as well. That would help us a lot. We are so close, Ray, to our 500 mark, 500 subscriber mark. So help us get there. Help us reach out that 500 mark on YouTube. Um, Anything you'd like to add, Ray, on that?
Um,
Chaos lesson. I love that. And again, if you're not watching our YouTube, you don't know why we get distracted. We're not.
I am the king of distracting people with the ticker. we have such a huge list of crazy ticker hashtags and things like that. So
Nice.
I mean, like we had this one when you were away, Robert.
Nice.
So I mean, we did that sort of thing. But yeah, we're busy here having fun and enjoying sci-fi. So yeah, we'd love you to join us. Look, you can catch us on our Discord. You can catch us on Threads. You can catch us on Substack. You can catch us on Facebook. We're all over the place. We're even on a podcast apparently. So You can catch us there as well. But yeah, we always appreciate you spending the time to listen, to watch, and those subscriptions do help. So we got 4 this week, I think, which is pretty awesome. So keep it up, and we'll crack that 500 very shortly. So yeah, click that subscribe button if you wouldn't mind, please.
Awesome. Okay, so I guess we can move on to another segment that I like to call
The Alita Army News.
No laugh today? Oh,
No Laugh today.
no laughing. There's serious stuff. Yeah, so most recently, Radio Chaos episode 243. Yes, it's getting up there. And we were, it's the new month, so new manga that we were covering. We are in Takabon volume, I want to say 7. I think it's number 7, which is Angel of Chaos. Fork in the Road, Mission 5 Choices. It's one of the shortest chapters in the entire first run of the manga. But it has a lot going on. Koyomi, who grew up in the scrapyard around Alita when she was back there, she decides to join the Barjack and protect Den, and basically puts herself at odds with Typhares / Salem and Alita. And Alita basically says, if you do this again, I will kill you. And she's not kidding, because Alita doesn't kill her. So yeah, Koyomi gets 1 free pass, and she's used it. Yeah. And I was told, and I'm not 100% sure if this is correct, but it may be, that they never meet again in the manga. So it's just as well. But yeah.
Lucky for her, right?
Oh, totally. And also very sad that they killed off a character at the end of this chapter. Bye Jasmine. It was a short time that we knew you, but it was a good time. So
Not rubber approved then.
no. Definitely not. Nope, she lost her head, quite literally. But yeah, highly recommend you read the manga Battle Angel Alita. The movie is Alita Battle Angel, of course, but the manga is Battle Angel Alita, or Gumu in Japanese. Highly recommend it. I've read it probably 16, 17 times now over the last 35 years. Love it to death, and it is great sci-fi. So check that
out. Awesome. Okay, I guess I'm going to ask the question that we asked in the pre-show, and I have a feeling I know the answer. Are we ready?
For this topic, I've been living this for years.
Do we? I guess before we jump into it, do we have a short plot?
Short.
Yeah, that's the question of the year. Sure.
Let's just say it's shorter than most of the episode plots for Star Trek, at least.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Just before I dive into the plot, I wanted to say that the budget of this movie was somewhere between 88 and 129 million. It was filmed in 2013-14, released in 2015, 106 minutes long. The box office was 244.9 million worldwide, which was considered a flop, which is a shame because I thought it was a freaking awesome movie. I'm not a huge Adam Sandler fan. I find his humor can be a bit too over the top at times. But when he gets it just right, and it's sort of that Beverly Hills Cop level of snark right, and when you hit that, it sort of just really jives well. And a lot of the humor in this movie was underplayed, which I prefer. It's sort of a bit more British than it is American in the way it's presented. But I thought it worked really well. But apparently for movie-going audiences, it didn't work that well. And I don't understand why.
Yeah,
this is a great movie.
I love that movie, and you have no idea how many times I have heard, oh yeah, that movie sucks. And I can't understand, because I know there's a lot of people that don't like Adam Sandler movies. I might be the wrong person for it because I love his movies. So I guess in this episode we'll have the two sides of the coin. From the perspective of an Adam Sandler fan, and
Yeah.
from a perspective of someone that prefers not to watch Adam Sandler. But I don't know if that's even a reason, because this movie was great.
I look, don't peg me as an Adam Sandler basher. When he gets it right, he does a good job. I just think that some of his humor is a little bit overplayed. But this movie was spot on. And the writing was really good as well. It was well written. Everything sort of was laid out in an order which made sense. There was payoffs for every lead up, and there was real character growth in pretty much all the characters. So I could not find anything to fault. And when you can't find anything to fault, clearly they did a good job. So I just do not understand why this movie bombed. I don't get it. And if you haven't watched this movie, go watch it. We'll still be here when you get back. It's 106 minutes. And, if you've ever done any retro gaming, or if, like myself and Robert, you were there when it happened, it's your history, your formative years, and you were a gamer, this movie is right up your alley. There are so many callbacks. And I'm like, Q-Bert's awesome. Q-Bert is so cool. That it's well worth your time to watch this. Go watch it. We'll be here and come back to us when you've watched it, because we are spoiling the crap out of this. You know we are.
Oh yeah.
And in the meantime, I will give the plot to those who didn't watch it.
Yeah, we're going there. So yes.
At an arcade in 1982, Will Cooper watches his friend Sam Brenner seemingly lose a Donkey Kong Championship game to Eddie the Fire Blaster Plant. Video cassette footage of the event is included in a it says time capsule, but it's not. It's actually a probe that is launched into space. So that was basically the callback at the beginning of the movie, sort of setting up the whole setup for the movie. In the present, which is 2015, Brenner is an electronics installer, while Will is the president of the United States. So there was two friends who went off to the arcade, which was Sam and Will. They were teenagers. And fast forward to 2015, and you've got Sam Brenner, who's just a down on his luck tech installer. And
MIT graduate.
Sorry?
MIT graduate.
Yeah, Mississippi Institute of Technology. Though.
It's
the different one. It's the alt MIT. And Will basically got Barack Obama's second term. So Barack, you only got one go at it, one bite of the apple. And Will has got the presidency from 2013, I want to say. So Will is the president of the United States. Anderson Air Force Base in Guam is besieged by extraterrestrials, dun, 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 in the form of Gallagher. If you don't know what that is, Google will help you. It's a very early sci-fi game. Which
you know what? Pause us right now. Go to Google, search Gallagher, and then come back. That should be 2 seconds.
And you can get it for $1.99 on your Android or iPhone. So download it and play it. It's good fun. Will summons Brenner and Lieutenant Colonel Violet Van Patten to the White House. Now, they don't mention it here, but Sam was actually installing tech at Violet's house. So that's why they know each other at this point. Seeing video footage of the attack and meeting with fellow gamer Ludlow Wonderkid Lamonsoff, Brenner deduces that aliens have mistaken the video cassette as a declaration of war and are attacking Earth with arcade game icons. The aliens challenge Earth to a best of 5, claiming it was a best of 3. A best of 3 battle, claiming Earth has lost the first match. The next attack is on the Taj Mahal in the form of Arkanoid, but Brenner and Will cannot persuade people of Brenner.
Yeah.
Okay, I need to edit this. Brenner and Will cannot persuade the president, and Earth loses the second match. Brenner and Ludlow train Navy SEALs to play games while Violet develops effective energy weapons. See, Violet actually works for DARPA. The team heads to London, where the aliens attack Hyde Park in the form of Centipede. There's another classic game you need to go check out.
Yeah, go search it.
Pause.
Google it.
Google. Download, play. This is becoming repetitive. But are defeated by Brenner and Ludlow. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the arcade geeks step up and save the day. Eddie is freed from prison to assist in New York City, where the team fights in Mini Coopers as ghosts against a giant pac-man. That was so cool.
I enjoyed that. Oh my god.
Brenner tricks Pac-Man and wins the game, with Q*bert being a trophy before the aliens accuse Earth of cheating, meaning Earth fails the challenge. Violet's son Maddie discovers that Eddie was using a cheat code written on his glasses, like he did during the 1982 Donkey Kong Finals match. That damn cheater. Eddie flees and the aliens abduct Matty. Dun, dun, dun. You've done it now. You've stolen a human kid. You're going to regret that.
That's it.
The aliens attack Washington, D.C. with an army of video game characters. One attacks Ludlow as Lady Lisa, his longtime computer game crush, but he persuades her to join him with a declaration of love.
Yeah. Because that worked.
Stranger things have happened. I haven't tried it myself. A repentant Eddie returns to the fight. Brenner, Violet, and Will are summoned to the alien mothership for a last chance to save Earth by facing their leader as Donkey Kong. Noticing the random pattern of barrels and fireballs, Brenner loses hope until Maddie reveals Eddie's cheating. Realizing that he's actually the world's best Donkey Kong player. How do you just realize that? It's like, oh yeah, convenient. Brenner regains his spirit and defeats Donkey Kong, and the aliens leave Earth. The team is hailed as heroes, and Will negotiates a peace agreement with the aliens. Eddie apologizes to Brenner for cheating and acknowledges him as the best Donkey Kong player in the world. Ludlow is devastated that Lisa is gone, so Q*bert transforms its likeness into Lisa. Brenner and Violet start a romantic relationship, and Eddie meets Serena Williams and Martha Stewart in the Lincoln bedroom. Yeah, a William Stewart sandwich, apparently that was called.
Oh, God.
The aliens restore everything on Earth, including the creator of Pac-Man's hand, which was bitten off by Pac-Man. Yes, they went there.
Hero, you're a nice boy.
Somebody kill this bitch! 1 year later, Ludlow and Lisa are married and have Q*bert-like children. Betty. I mean, I would have just watched the whole movie just for that scene. Roll credits now. The credits are actually a video gamified version of the major events of the movie. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
That was so cool.
It's awesome.
That was so good. Okay, I'll stop gushing now. I'll talk seriously.
Before I move on, I just got to ask, have you played Q*bert?
No, I haven't.
You never played Q*bert?
No, I didn't.
I wanted to ask you this because when I mentioned that game to Chaos, he doesn't even know what that is.
I know the character Q*bert, but I never saw the game.
The game, I used to play in the arcades. And I remember putting the quarter in there and playing. I used to love playing that game. And as a matter of fact, I still have it. for one of my retro game consoles, and I played. But I always find it interesting because that I guess from my perspective, visiting the arcade back in the day, this was one of the games that I would play. I mean, there's others, but I remember playing that a lot, and I had a very fond memories about that. But when I mention it to people, they're like, either they don't know what Qbert is, or they never played the game. So I wonder. I don't know. I wonder why. It might
I
be.
I played everything on that list but Qbert. I haven't played Arkanoid, but I never played Qbert. And I don't know that. Like, I think we had a Qbert arcade game in the local arcade at one point, because I vaguely remember seeing the gameplay, but I never played it. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Maybe the gameplay just never grabbed me.
I wonder if it's a combination of the gameplay, like watching it and not playing it, and also the images on the side of the arcade. Because I don't know, maybe there's something to it as to why people don't remember, or didn't play, or don't know what that is, and they go straight to the, like, the asteroids and the big hitters like Centipede and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But this movie, if you hear us talking, and if you are one of us, and if you have not watched this film, you should pause us and go watch it right now. You will thank us.
Yeah.
Because this is a love letter, not only to sci-fi and alien invasion, but to the 80s and to gaming.
Arcade gaming specifically in the first
Specifically
place.
arcade game, retro, what they call now retro game. It's a love letter to all those things. If you love those things, or even if you are, because retro gaming has picking up some traction lately. And I don't know if I have to thank Nintendo for that, because they had that membership that you can subscribe, where you now have uh, eh, all the old Nintendo games, as well as Sega game, the old ones we're talking about, like uh, uh, Mario Brothers, and from the Sega side would be Sonic the Hedgehog. But also how the revival of Atari has become a thing. So now you can actually buy an Atari today. If you go to atari.com, I believe is $136 US. And you can actually use your old cartridges if you are old school gamers like us, and you still have a cartridge going around, or you can actually buy their cartridges. They're actually selling new cartridges, and you could actually play asteroids. Yeah, you could play all those really good retro games from the day. And the reason why I'm going this long way about it is because there has been a resurgence of people loving retro gamings today. And there's a long list of people with long collections of retro games that were not even alive when these retro games were like in their high day. So if you are one of those that love retro gaming and you have not watched this film, I strongly recommend you watch it. But if you are, this is, and notice how I'm ticking a lot of boxes here. Like this movie checks a lot of boxes, and to me specifically, and I'm sure that I can speak for Ray when I say this too. It plays heavily on the nostalgia factor. Now, I remember going to the arcades regularly from the 80s, actually most of the 80s, because I remember even when I was in high school, which is
Oh yeah.
getting into the 90s, I graduated in 1990. My lunch break was going across the high school to an arcade game place, But what I love about this one in particular, and I have so many fond memories of that one, is that they serve burgers and fries. So I always found that interesting how they had like a plastic tray. You go and get your food, and the tray is at an angle. So you could actually hang it on the side of the arcade. It will hold your drinks, your burger, and your fries. And that's basically where I spend some of my lunch break is in this arcade game, a place, this arcade place where I on my lunch break, I went and if convenient, I guess these people were making lots of money because they were right across. I mean, I crossed the street from my high school, and this place was there. I
Well
remember
positioned.
yeah, well, very well positioned. I'm sure they made tons of money because that place was packed every time, especially during lunch break. But also, I remember going to different locations. And by the way, during this time, I was in Miami. Um, so if you've been in Miami in the '80s, you'll probably relate to that a lot. I remember going on the weekends, Saturday or Sundays. We would go, and I would have dates on arcades. And
A completely different experience to my hometown.
yeah, it's I was we were talking about in the pre-show where I found that really curious, but my experience was very wholesome, where
Nope.
we would have a nice night with my date where we'd actually play different arcade games, and not only that, but we would play like, air hockey and all various different games, and
Okay, Casanova.
well I'm just speaking to the experience that I don't think it will ever come back, of that nice and wholesome time that you spent with someone, and not only that, right? I also remember going out with friends, kinda like how we see in this film, um, and you have a really nice night, out in a place playing video games. That is never gonna come back, ever. Um, most gamers today, if not all gamers today, play from their comfort on their own home. And the only socialization that it is done is via, and I remember when this started was via Discord or what was it, Trello? I forgot. There was various ones.
MIRC before that.
MIRC, where you
Yeah.
connected and you play voice. And nowadays, most consoles already do this.
Mm.
So, and in addition, you could actually connect your Discord and talk through Discord. But most games have their own voice chat option where you can
Yeah.
just play, and that's the only socialization. I like to think there has to be a very different experience when you compare socialization in gaming, how it's done today, to how socialization was done back in the day when you used to go to a place to play and you see people and you talk face to face.
Mm. It depends what sort of people were there, I guess. My experience was a bit different. Australia, country town in the 80s, was a lot rougher, it sounds like, than Miami. Um, there was a lot of competition to get onto the latest and greatest games, or the classics, the favorites. I actually remember back in the late 70s when Space Invaders, the first arcade machines, electronic arcade machines, actually landed. I remember like 76, 77, when it was just pinball machines. I liked them, but I thought they were a bit boring. I mean, it's like physics. I'm not that interested in ball physics. But then, we didn't have it in my hometown of Albury yet, which was a country town on the New South Wales Victorian border, inland, away from the capitals. But then we travel once a year up to the Gold Coast, which is in the bottom part of Queensland, and it's like a holiday area. And that was where I first saw a Space Invaders machine. It was a monochrome screen. There was no colors. It was just white and black. and that noise from the alien spaceships, and it was all 8-bit sound effects. So this was really early stuff, and it just mesmerized me. I was like standing there, like I didn't have any money. I wasn't old enough to have an allowance or anything yet, and I was just standing there watching it. And my parents were like, "Oh, what the hell is that thing? Oh, don't go near that." You know, the whole sort of parental can't stand new things, don't go near them kind of malarkey. But it didn't take long for that to show up in the pinball arcade, which is what it was before video arcade games showed up. So we had a pinball arcade in my hometown, which was the place where delinquents went and smoked and drank out of hip flasks or bottles wrapped in brown paper bags. And I think there was probably some drug deals going on there and lots of smoking. And it was really fucking seedy, I got to say. It was like pre-pub. It was like the pub without the adults kind of deal. It was older teens who were a bit on the dodgy side. And then enter all of the computer game geeks in the making who wanted to go in there and play the games, not meet up with their dodgy friends and buy some drugs and drink alcohol and stuff. So there was a real dichotomy of the crowd in that place. The dodgy ones would be right up the back, and you try and keep away from them, and you'd be trying to get onto the games and make the most of your limited pocket change that you could get. And then if you were unlucky, you'd get you get shaken down for your pocket change because the toughs wanted the money. So just like you get bullies in school stealing your lunch money, they'd steal your arcade gaming change. So it was a bit of a rough place, but still, and all, we had a pretty good time, even from the very beginnings of Space Invaders, when it was black and white, and then not very much long after it became color, and it just took off from there. And you got all the games that are shown here, Galaga. I remember playing a lot of Asteroids. I was pretty keen on Asteroids. What else was really big?
I think Asteroids is a staple of sci-fi fan.
Totally.
I used to play so much, and to be honest with you, even now you have the option of playing the regular or the color version. I still prefer the regular one, which is the white and black, because it brings nostalgia. That's the one that I used to play a lot. And to be honest with you, the first color game that I used to play was one that my brother it was my brother's favorite. It's called Yard's Revenge. And I don't know if you guys
don't know that one.
Yeah, we spent so many hours in that game. It is an Atari product. But it was
I've seen that cover. I've definitely seen that cover before, Yard's Revenge.
Yeah, if you look for a screenshot of the game, I'm sure you probably have to remember because it was a hot game. It was played a lot. It's even today you could find it. As a matter of fact, they sell the cartridge at Atari.com right now. But yeah, that was the very first color arcade game that I used to play. Everything else was you mentioned. Yeah, I remember having that box and the cartridge was inside.
And it came with a comic book, apparently.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I wonder where that comic book went. I remember I had it inside. I was like protecting it inside the box. But years go by. I was a kid, so God knows where that is at right now.
be worth a bit if it was mint.
Yeah. But apparently, thanks to Atari and I don't even know if it's the actual Atari company, but the whole Atari thing is back. So if you want to buy it, you could buy it right now.
I didn't realize Defender was as early as 82. The whole thing was Space Invaders was the first one, and then it just went crazy. Like Pac-Man, Centipede, Donkey Kong, Arkanoid, Cubert, Defender. They all just sprouted up within a couple of years of
I
Space
want to say
Invaders.
1981 was a hot year for retro gaming.
Mm.
That was like I don't know, maybe that's just my perception. So if you are if you are listening out there and you know I'm maybe wrong, just reach out and let us know. But from my perspective, it seems like most of the games or the big majority of the hot retro games came out in 1981. And then after that, I just went crazy. It's just like,
You know, it's very interesting that 1977 Star Wars, 1978 Space Invaders, they were right on each other's heels. I mean, it all just happened at the
yes.
end of the 70s.
Awesome. So yeah, I find it very, very curious also, and I want to bring this up to the audience here. You have heard my perception of how my arcade years went, and you have heard Ray's. I'm very curious to hear if you are from the '80s, like we are. Uh, what was your experience on the arcade? If you ever visited arcades back in the day, I'm very curious to see if your experience has been close or the same as either Ray or me, or if it was different. But let us know. I'm really curious. So I guess we can go back to the initial question that we asked in the show, and is what how old were you when you watched this thing, and what was your very first experience with it?
Oh, now you're making me do some mental calculations. So I probably saw this on home release in 2016. I missed it at the cinema, which is a shame, really,
Me too.
because it would have been great seeing all that
Oh,
stuff
yeah.
on a huge screen. But yeah, so what? 2016 was what? 8 years ago. So I was 47, I guess, when this movie came out. And yeah, it was, when I saw it, I really enjoyed it. I thought, oh, wow, that's got some real retro feel to it. And it was well put together, as I've mentioned. So, you know, it was a satisfying movie, but I guess it didn't really get the sort of deep thinking juices flowing at the time. Now, I often say that my perception of movies and you know, all sorts of science fiction materials now is completely different since I started this podcast, and it is because now I look at things with a much more critical eye. And you know, getting into my own writing, I'm looking at the way things are written, the setups and the payoffs, character arcs, character progression, and all that sort of thing. And I got to say that this movie is almost a masterclass in so many different ways of putting together a good sci-fi comedy. It really is well put together. I can barely fault it on anything. It's got everything it needs to succeed, and I don't know why it didn't. I just really don't.
Yeah. So sometimes I wonder if it was could I say that it was ahead of its time somewhat? Because what you said makes a lot of sense from the perspective of comments that I've heard, where it's just it wasn't just there, and I wonder if those people would give it a time now and rewatch it. Would they, just like you, would their opinions change? I also wonder if we can fault a little the advertising,
Yeah.
only because, like you said, I also missed it from the theaters, and I would have loved to see this in the theaters, and I never heard of it. I watch it on home release, just like you did. I guess the only thing that I could do right now is just put it on a projector, and maybe make it a movie night. But it's still not the same. Still not the same.
But I
But
mean, it has got everything it needs to be, not necessarily a masterpiece, but certainly a good, solid pick for an enjoyable, entertaining movie. And I just still can't understand why it didn't have more success. Maybe it was uh, 5-6 years ahead of its time. Maybe retro gaming hadn't quite taken off as it has now.
yeah,
To really feed into the experience of the movie. But I really thought it was well put together. I mean, from a writer's perspective, it's got all the payoffs and all the character arcs, and it's got good, believable characters, people going through tough times. I mean, there's divorce and drinking and going to jail for crimes and all sorts of deep social commentary, but it's also a comedy, and it's also retro gaming, and they're defending the world, so it's got that sort of epic component. I mean, it's got everything that it should need, really. And I've watched it twice in the last couple of not in the last week, because I mean, we did say on the last podcast when I said what have I been watching, I caught the movie Pixels, it's just come on Netflix, and oh wow, I'd forgotten how good this is, we should cover it, and here we are. So I mean, it wasn't a hard choice because it's a good movie.
yeah. Another thing that I wanted to speak to, and I guess it's just to bring a little perspective. Um, in the movie, at the beginning of the movie, they're talking about, and this was 1982. They were talking about the 1982 Worldwide Video Arcade Championship.
Which wasn't won by Adam Sandler.
Exactly. I believe it was Toru Ueda, a Japanese player, and the game was not Donkey Kong, but it was Pac-Man. That's the one that actually um, made them the game the winner of this championship. But one of the things is that I remember when I saw this movie for the first time, I actually searched it, and I didn't know it was a real thing, and that made me question myself. And I have come to the realization that the reason why I never heard of that championship is because I was I was never competitive when it comes to video gaming. So my gaming experience was for pure fun. So I know that, that there's no internet. So advertising and promotions on things like this are a lot harder, or were a lot harder back then. So, because the first question that I asked myself, like, how did I not know this was a thing? I was 12 years old, number one. But I feel that the answer lies in the fact that although I had some friends that were competitive, I never had friends that were competitive enough to, like, competitive. When I say competitive, I said a friend, we went to Pac-Man. It's like, look, my name is number one. Can you beat it? And then you would go and play it to try to knock the, because if you remember back in the day, arcades will actually record the last, was it the last five? Some of them were the last 10.
Yeah.
With the top scores. And that's the type of competitiveness that I remember. My friends will look like a number two. Can you beat me? Right? And then you play to try to knock him off of that and be number two, or maybe be number one. But it's not enough to be like, to say, oh, I'm going to be the best Pac-Man player in, say, the entire city of Miami. Right? So maybe that is the answer that I was looking for. I was never that person, and I was never around people that were that competitive when it comes to arcade gaming. Because all the friends that I had were, we were all playing it for fun. So that might probably answer the reason why I never heard of that. Did you know that this was a real thing? Have you heard of the worldwide competition?
Well, I mean, I know there's esports and stuff that go on more recently than that, but no, I didn't realize that they had a worldwide competition way back in '82. That's a little bit mind blowing. I mean, come on, we're over here in Australia. There's no internet. It wouldn't be covered by any of the news services here, so I had no clue. Just
And you know, and I agree with that. I mean, I was in Miami, so and I never heard of that. So that maybe that is the reasoning. Maybe this was because everything is all about money,
yeah.
right? So there were companies like Atari. These companies have these machines, and they have access to what are the top scores on their machines and for how long. So maybe it's a game of numbers and how they can like promote their games and make more sales. Since I was never one of those top players, I don't think I remember being, maybe aside from Qbert, being on that screen that shows top players. And even on Qbert, I think I got as far as number 9 on the list.
All right.
Um, so I don't I honestly think that's the reason why. I never heard of that.
I had a few games that I was pretty good at and was on the top score on some of them. But I mean, I think that they'd only be the top score for the day because they turn them off overnight and then lose, like the memory wasn't solid state. So as soon as the power went off, the top score listings would be wiped. So you then have to go in the next day and play it again to get on the top score ranking. I'm pretty sure that at some points in the 80s, they put solid state drives in them to hold top score rankings so that they would persist. But I don't think that that was the case early on.
I honestly think also is regional, because I also noticed that some machines will keep it for a couple of days and some did not. And I think I have come to the conclusion that these places kept their machines running.
Oh yeah.
And maybe some machines were turned off for X or Y reason, and then the top scores get wiped out. But I noticed that inconsistency, how like maybe Space Invaders had a week, and then all of a sudden there was no top score. And I always wonder about that, but it kind of makes sense that maybe, I don't know, maybe they needed to move the machine so they can clean under it, and they had to unplug it. But yeah, most of the places that I visited kept their machines running.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. So yeah, I was just kind of curious about that, because it's something that I remember back in 2016. I was thinking, like, how, and I'm like questioning myself, like I was from there. I was there, and why I don't remember this. And yeah, that makes a lot more sense as to why.
Yeah, I was a top scorer on a number of games that I meshed well with and was able to get through to the end of the game. But yeah, that where I grew up, the top scores didn't stay around very long, and I just didn't have enough allowance to go in there every day and get my top score back. So it might be once a week or once a month or something.
Maybe they were smart by turning the machines off.
Well, I mean, I would think that you'd want the top scores to stay around for like a week and then get wiped, so that they'd have to go in every week and put their top score back on. That would be doable, I think, financial wise for a teenager. But if it was every single day, they just wouldn't bother.
They just wanted the money. That's all.
Yeah.
You want to be the top player. You come here every day.
Yeah, basically. And then, of course, there was that last Starfighter arcade game in the corner.
Yes. Love it. Love it. Love it.
I used to play Battlezone too. Battlezone was pretty good.
So,
The vector graphic tank game.
oh yes, yes. Wasn't that a title released on that? What was that name of that gaming console? It was like a uh virtual mate. It was. It was like all red. You have to like put it on your eyes, and it's like supposed. It was supposed to be like virtual reality back in the day.
Oh yeah.
A bunch of red lines, but it looked looked really cool. I think that was one of the titles for that.
It would be if they employed vector graphics.
Yeah, I was looking. As a matter of fact, I was looking at some of the games that are like. I remember my experience back in the day was like, wow, and I'm looking at them now. It's like right now we have Oculus and a PlayStation VR, and you look at this and it's like, wow. But I still have those memories. It was a really warm, and I didn't even have one. There was a friend of mine in the neighborhood that had it and brought it home, so we kind of share. Like he didn't have what I had, and I didn't have what he had, so he would come home. He was very smart coming home because my dad was an executive chef, so he knows that he had good food, ooh, good Italian food. I mean, we're talking about lobster here,
Oh,
and he will bring the gaming console, and we had a really nice time together playing. And then, of course, I don't know if I ever mentioned this, but my dad was a gamer also,
oh.
and he would sit down with us and play video games with me and my friends. And in some of them, he was really good at it. He would actually will kick some of my friends, and including me, um, kick our butts on a specific game. I remember one specifically that he really liked. It was the X. I can't remember the name of the title, and I'm looking for it because I want to see if there's a retro game that I can buy somewhere. But it was. I remember it was the X-Men, and it was a fighting one. Like you get in controller, your friend get the other controller, and you fight against each other. I remember my friends would be pissed because they're losing to an old guy.
Oh, dude, that's funny.
But yeah, I have really good memories of that. I I want to say the very first console that my dad bought me, and I question that now, right? I question, did he buy himself or did he buy it for us? Because it was always there. It was the Atari 2600 console.
You were his excuse.
Yes, yes, because I know mom would not go for it. So if it was for the kids, it was fine.
Yes, if you don't have kids, you can't buy like kid stuff for yourself.
Yeah. But yeah, I have very fun memories of playing even at home because my dad was always there. He was always playing. Now I understand him because there are some games like, for example, I remember playing Call of Duty. I was really good at Call of Duty. I had friends from work and even prior to that, we get together on voice and we team up against other people online, and we're pretty good. We're not the best, but we're pretty good. Um, I can remember lately I downloaded Call of Duty and I was dead in 2 seconds. Respawn, dead. Respawn, dead. Respawn, dead.
Well, you remember what you're supposed to do, right? Pretend you're the guy and don't want to die. To quote a certain someone.
So I think and the reason why I'm saying this story is because I think I relate to my dad now because he doesn't game anymore, right? He's out there, right? He's retired. He's on pension. But I think maybe as you age, your reflexes are not the same. So that explain why I can't play Call of Duty like I used to play it before. Um, but I understand why he doesn't play now. And but I think that I will be slightly different when I reach his age because I really enjoy gaming. And I think the only thing that will change as I grow older will be the type of games that I play. So it seems like today or lately, I have been picking. If I recall most of the games that I played lately that I enjoyed the most, I think I choose the ones that are story driven, not as like intensive battles like before. And they're like there's a couple there that are pleasing. Like I don't know if you heard of Palia. It's a very zen, relaxing, open world game.
All right.
Um, I still enjoy World of Warcraft, but then again, World of Warcraft is its own thing. I think anybody can find a place within that because it's that wide, right? So I don't even count that World of Warcraft as anybody can pick it up. The only problem is you have to make sure that you have the time for it because it will consume your life.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Speaking of consuming your life, I have spent, God, tens of thousands of hours gaming in my life. And a couple of years ago, I just got jack of it. I said, I've spent all this time doing this, and you get this minor payoff when you've completed a game, or if you're playing something online, it never ends. It's just the same thing over and over again. And I just went, I'm just going to stop for a while. And I really just haven't picked it back up again. I've played like one or two things on the VR when my son got the headset earlier in the year. But other than that, I do actually want to play Bridge Crew with you guys.
oh my God,
We've got to set that up. And
yes.
apparently it's a bit janky.
Yes, it is. You might be in the middle of a game and sometimes it stops working and then you have to get out, come back in, and start over again.
I still want to try it because I love Star Trek. So,
Yeah,
got to give
it
that a shot.
is.
I just want to stand up there and go, today is a good day to die. That'd be fun.
Oh,
Yeah, I think now it's more the people that I game with than the gaming itself. Like I used to play a lot of single player and, just trying to beat the game or get to the end of the story or what have you. But more recently, it's been the people I game with, people that you can get along with and have fun with and enjoy the experience together, which, is a bit different from what it used to be. I mean, we used to play multiplayer back in the arcade days, but it was more like you'd have a go and then you'd die and then be their turn and they'd have a go. Or if it was a game that actually had you both on the screen at once, oftentimes you'd elf shot the food. Wizard needs food badly. It's like, crap, give me that food. So, a bit less than cooperative, you might say. Oh, dear. But yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of good times.
so yeah, I mean, we're reminiscing here, and this is what this movie does.
Yeah.
And it's one of the reasons why I don't understand, just like you, Ray, why this movie didn't do any better. At least within the people that experience the thing. Because I understand that when this movie came out, maybe, like you said, it is valid reason, retro gaming hasn't picked up as much as it picked up now. Maybe if you watch it now, there's going to be a lot more people enjoying it because of the retro gaming and stuff like that. But I always wonder within the subset of people who experienced the thing, who were in arcades back in the 80s, why was the because there was a lot, I have to believe that there were quite a lot of people that are from the 80s. They visited the arcade, considering the population of the planet. Um, so I still find it hard to believe that this movie didn't do better, at least within the subset of people, because it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess whereas, we're big sci-fi fans, anime fans, gaming fans, had lots of years of the gaming and the sci-fi, and it means a lot to us. We haven't moved on from it, but perhaps a lot of these people who were into that back then have moved on from it now, and perhaps have even been convinced by others that it was a waste of time and it's not worth revisiting, and therefore, shun it deliberately.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not the sort of person to go, oh, I wasted my life and rah, rah, rah. No, I was enjoying it at the time. So yeah, why should I turn around and say, nah, that was crap, why did I bother? Even now, I don't game much anymore, but I still appreciated the enjoyment. You can tell by the way we're reminiscing about it that I appreciated it at the time, and I'm not about to turn around and try and overwrite that with some rhetoric about, oh, gaming is bad, okay, or something. No, it's part of my life. It's what I did. I have fond memories of at least parts of it, so why not?
Yeah.
And certainly, I like you said, when I first watched this movie, I was like, wow, this is really cool. And even the rewatches just recently, I don't often rewatch a movie twice before we have a episode on it. I've got a little bit too much to do with family and work and all those other things, but this one I made sure I watched twice because I really wanted to get my head around it, because it is so nostalgic and it does have a lot of points of convergence with my memories and my history. So yeah, I mean, not that I was involved in an alien invasion from energy beings who decided to look like retro gaming characters, but I think it's cool.
Yeah. I would have loved to see Sonia from
Oh yeah,
what was that?
Red Sonja.
No, it was what was that game? I completely forgot now. Oh my god. It was from Sega Saturn. One of the greatest game consoles that had to die. I still cry that one. Soul Calibur. There you go.
Oh right.
So I wanted to ask you something because there was one minor thing, and I say minor, in this movie that bugged me from the very first time that I watched this film, and even every time that I actually rewatched this film, it was something. I say minor. It's not a major thing. It's definitely a minor thing, but still, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that. And is uh, rewinding back to the beginning of the film,
Yeah.
we see Brenner competing in the 1982 worldwide gaming competition, where uh, he was facing off against, what was it, Firestarter?
Firestarter. No, that wasn't it.
Well, it was the
Eddie the Fire Blaster Plant.
Fire Blast. There you go, Fire Blaster. Um, they selected Donkey Kong, which, by the way, I played that game so much. In the arcade and at home. For some reason, my memories were more wholesome on the arcade, and I had to say that maybe it's due to the social aspect of it, because I was around with friends and we were having a good time. So I have better memories of playing Donkey Kong on the arcade than I did at home. However, I digress there. When he loses Donkey Kong, then we fast forward to later in the movie, and we find out that Eddie, um, he actually cheated. So technically, he is Brenner, the worldwide 1982 worldwide champion. Now, throughout the movie, we see that played a major part on the future of Brenner since '82.
Oh yeah, sure. He basically wiped himself out. He was self-defeating after that.
So I wonder, and you might have an answer for this. Maybe I'm thinking about this from the wrong angle, but I always thought, and maybe I'm not thinking with the mentality of a 12-year-old. Maybe I should have, right? Because that's how old I was in 1982, and I'm thinking with the thoughts of an adult.
Yes.
But being number 2 on a worldwide championship is by no means a loser.
No, not at all.
And it always bugs me how he led. And again, I understand it was necessary for the plot of the film because that's what we needed to be him, you know. But thinking the major overthinker that I am here, it kind of bugged me a little
Yeah.
that he's considered himself a loser and he is number 2 in his worldwide championship. Considering me back in 82, 12 years old, that had never entered a championship for the arcade games. So,
Well,
think about
it gets even worse when you realize now, if you go back and look at the start of the movie, you will see people sitting there in the crowd holding big trophies, right? Because they were individual worldwide champions in particular games. Because there was other games that were played there as well. Defender, Frogger, they were all being played there, and they're not mentioned, but there were worldwide champions. You saw the Wonder Kid holding a big trophy. So he was the worldwide champion in one of the arcade games as well. It wasn't mentioned which one.
Mhm.
But what they said was, it was the worldwide arcade game champion of the world, right? That's what they were competing for. These people were the world champions in particular arcade games, but the actual overall worldwide champion arcade gamer of the world 1982 was being decided between Eddie Plant and Sam Brenner. Now, they were individual game champions of the world. Sam Brenner was the pac-man world champion. Sorry, Eddie Plant was the pac-man world champion, although he cheated, so he wasn't really. And I'm trying to remember what Sam's one was. I think it was Centipede. I think he was the Centipede world champion.
Yeah,
So he's already a world champion in an arcade game. He's not a loser. He's not second place. He got beaten. He actually finished Donkey Kong. He finished the game. He cracked what we used to call in the day cracking the game. You crack the game if you play all the way through to the end. And either it says game over and you get the high score, or you get a score in the top 10. And the game either starts again or it just says game over. So he was already a world champion in a game. But they both, Eddie and Sam, had got the same number of points to get to where they were. So then they had to have a tiebreaker, and that was Donkey Kong, because obviously they'd kept a game aside to be the tiebreaker.
Yeah.
And Donkey Kong was probably really new at the time, so not a lot of people were good at it yet. So they kept that as the tie-breaking game. And then Sam had built himself up mentally so much that the only thing that mattered was being the world video game champion. And he lost the championship because Eddie Plant got more points completing the game than he did. That was the only difference. They both completed the game, but one guy got more points than the other. Maybe he hadn't lost as many lives, so he had a few more points or something. Whatever it wasn't much, but that was enough for Sam to start torpedoing himself and basically he took on in his headspace that he was a loser because he was second in the world. And it's just like, I know it had to be that way for the plot, but it's just ridiculous. Being second in the world at something is nothing to be sneezed at. I mean, come on, seriously. And the difference was just like a difference on the day. And then we found out later that Eddie was cheating. So Sam was actually the world champion, the legitimate world champion. And he had been telling himself he was a loser all those years because someone else cheated.
Yeah.
And it is a sad reflection of what happens to a lot of people. Being first in the world and winning at everything is the only measure of success, and everything else is a loss, a failure. And that's just not how life works. Life isn't digital. Life is analog. There's a continuum, and you're somewhere on that continuum. You're not the winner or the loser. And one person's winning is another person's losing, depending on how you look at things. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it had to work for the story, but logically, if you think about it from an adult, mature perspective, and I will admit there's a lot of adults out there that don't have one of those, but yeah, it really doesn't make a huge amount of sense. But for a 12-year-old, I can definitely see it. And a lot of people carry this baggage with them from, something they've put their whole life into trying to achieve and didn't get there. A lot of people do this in sport too. They spend their formative years training at a sport to try and be the best, and they get an injury on the way there, and it just never happens for them, and they never recover because they put everything into it and got nowhere. And then they tell themselves, well, I'm useless. I can't achieve anything. And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, much like it happened to Sam Brenner. And he ended up where he was. But he had the skills and the talent and saved the world. And I guess that's what the movie's trying to tell you. The movie's trying to tell you that even if you think that everything you tried to do in your life was useless, you may be shown that, in fact, it wasn't. And it's all a matter of perspective.
Yeah. I agree. And I like your perspective on this thing. And I want to say that maybe the reason why it kept on bothering me is because I was not thinking about that from the perspective of a 12, 15-year-old kid.
Hmm.
So it does make sense how some people, and I wouldn't call this, would I even call this regret? Because regret is something that you wish you could go back and change.
Yeah.
But winning a competition, there's nothing you could, well, maybe train harder. I don't know, but it definitely affected him the rest of his life.
Yeah. Up until he discovered that, in fact, he was the world champion, and then he saved the world. Because that's what you do, apparently.
Yeah. Can we talk about the form of attack of the aliens? Which, by the way, I would have to say that, and I'm thinking, and I don't know if you have a different perspective on this, but
He does that a lot, folks. He does a lot of thinking.
I can't think of any other sci-fi film that has used the topic of alien attack in the way this one done it. Especially
the closest that I can come up with is Galaxy Quest.
Yeah.
Where the aliens saw the what did they call them? The historic documents, which was actually a TV show, and then created their technology around the historic documents.
Oh my God, I love that film. The best Star Trek film ever made. No, I'm kidding.
That's right.
But yeah, it is the closest thing, but nothing. So the reason why I'm saying this is because I like to call this film very clever, and I really enjoy this on a sci-fi story when they're able to do something unique.
Yeah.
And like you said, Galaxy Quest is the closest thing to it, but it's not quite the same.
No, it's not.
So I'm really enjoying the fact that this is a fresh perspective on a couple of different unique tropes within sci-fi brought together by comedy.
Would you like me to bake your noodle a little bit?
Yes, please.
Okay, so you think you're a deep thinker. Here we go.
Hold my beer, right?
Cultural pollution. What do I mean by cultural pollution? Why did NASA think it was a good idea to send video game footage on a VHS tape out into the cosmos? Now, problem one, unless it was in a lead-lined box or something that was really dense to stop radiation from getting to it, that VHS tape would have been completely screwed by cosmic radiation.
Yes.
Because it's a magnetic tape. And we all know that magnetic fields screw magnetic tape up. And of course, the number of magnetic fields that that tape would have gone through, even just leaving the planet, would have been particularly devastating. So I'm not entirely sure how such a volatile medium actually made it all the way to the aliens. But we'll talk more about that in the science behind science fiction. But presuming the tape survived, cultural pollution. Now, what cultural pollution is basically the ideas and the norms of one culture being willfully or otherwise impressed upon or infecting another culture. It has been seen in, the European expansion of colonization in our history, the history of this planet. And basically, it's the subsuming of one culture by another by sheer force of intent, or the fact that one culture is way more progressive than another in technology or in social structures, and basically turned around and said, well, our social structure or our technology is better. If you want to compete, you've got to catch up. And it's happened a lot. It happened in Japan, happened in Mesoamerica. They all had to either level up or die. Now, why I'm talking about this is because this video game footage was shown to the aliens. And apparently their planet was peaceful until that videotape showed up. And once they got the information off it and saw what was going on there, they took it as a threat and a challenge. So they decided, well, if we want to fight back, we are going to have to take on the form of these, to them, aliens, which was us. We're going to have to take on the form of the way these people fight, and then we're going to go down to their planet and challenge them for the right to blow up their planet. That's what they decided to do. And it was a form of cultural, what was the term I used before? It was a really good term. Cultural pollution.
Pollution, yeah.
Cultural pollution, in that our ideas polluted their culture, and they changed their culture so that they could then interact with ours, not in a particularly good way. So we actually created our own nemesis.
Yeah.
And it was because that video game footage was sent out there without a context, and they created their own context, which was wrong. And that caused all the problems. So word to the wise, if you're going to send out information and not give it proper context, you're probably shooting yourself in the foot, or in this case, in the entire planet.
Yeah. And you have a really good point there because this is even a thing within humans.
Hmm.
And it's I think it's a problem of the current communication that we have today because I might be saying something to you and what I'm saying is expressing the thoughts and ideas that have made me who I am based on my experiences.
Mhm.
And it might make absolute sense even hearing myself talk. Let's say, for example, I recorded and I listen to myself again from the recording, and it makes sense. And I am right, and everything that I says makes sense. Everything coalesces together. It fits well. All the words. Um, and then the other person, any other person, listens to that, and they might be offended because they are not me. Because the way that they construct their thoughts, the way that they are at the moment they heard that message or they hear me speak, is a collection of everything that happened in their past. Let's throw a wrench in that thought for a minute, and let's say, for example, that I am saying the same thing, but instead of talking to someone else, it is me from another universe, and me that has gone through many different other things that I have not experienced, and in turn has become a different person. And he could be offended because that's one of the things that kind of, I want to say scare me, but I think that's a strong word. When we finally communicate with an alien species, when we haven't learned to communicate among ourselves. And I don't know if you ever thought about that, but it's something that slightly scares me because, and that's the reason why that we have to learn to become better humans. It kind of works the same way. And I want to say an analogy, but maybe it's not quite so. Um, when let's say, for example, you are with a partner and you have spent 10 years of your life and you had kind of become to know yourself. But within those 10 years, technically what you have done is you have learned to know who you are with that partner because that partner has become half of you. And all of a sudden, you break up and now you're half of that. And that's one of the things that make this whole thing harder because you don't know who you are. And you have to spend maybe 6 months learning to know who you are and love yourself before you can find a partner.
Preferably. Some people don't wait that long, but
Well, and that's why most of those fail
mm,
because you're trying to chase, you have to go through the normal process of grief. You have to go
yes.
through a normal process of discovering because all of a sudden you're half a person and you have to become whole before you have anything to share with another person, before you can accept another person into your life. Eh, and I think I forgot what I was going with this, but going back to learning to become better humans, we have to learn how to communicate with each other.
People get lazy communicating.
Yes, yes. And the reason why I say this is because whenever we communicate with aliens, we don't know. I mean, we have a problem with other people, with other humans, communicating with other humans. Now, put into the perspective an alien civilization that is completely alien in their thinking to what we think. And I think this is what we see in this film. We're sending this tape thinking, oh, quote unquote, in the film, it was fun. and we want to share the fun with the universe. And the aliens took it as a challenge and a declaration of war. So I think I think I got lost in my train of thought there, but I
I'm
think I
vaguely following what you're on about. No, context is king, and that no truer statement has been said. And what it means is that to understand communication in the first place, you have to have a point of context that matches between the speaker and the listener. If you've grown up in completely different environments with completely different contexts, it doesn't matter what words you use until you describe the context, so the person has some idea what the words relate to, what the metadata is around that statement. They've got to analyze it from their context, not yours, and they're not going to understand exactly what you meant because they don't share your context.
Yeah.
And, it's difficult between humans, but then between species that live on completely different planets and completely different solar systems, oh boy, it's going to get really hard. I mean, look, translation, and we've talked about translation with anime before between Japanese and English. It's complicated. And depending on the translator, you get a completely different feel for what's being said. And the whole thing is that the speaker, the Japanese person in this case, has a context, but if you don't share it, then you can't understand exactly what they're saying, and you might get it wrong. And that's exactly what happened in this movie. They got the context wrong because they didn't share the context of the original sender. So context is king. Is no true words have been spoken. If you don't give a context when you give information, then the other person's going to create their own context and probably get it wrong.
And something that I find slightly sad is I have actually read and listened to some techniques that make you a better communicator within the context of the corporate world. And one of the things that I find sad within that is the fact that before you have a conversation with another person, and this is within that context, which I think makes sense outside the context, and you'll let me know if you agree or not. You have to study the other person in a way to discover what their likes and dislikes are. And then you have to forge that conversation around their likes for the positive emotions and their dislikes for the negative emotion. So, for them to be able to understand your concept, you have to study the other person. Now, it makes sense that this would work outside the context of corporate world, but it still makes it sad because that, to me, leads me to believe that there is no empathy in the world, where the person with the interest has to make all the effort, all the homework, and the receiving person, for the most part, right? Because I'm talking in general terms here. There's always a lot of exceptions. The receiving end doesn't have the empathy enough to make a little effort to understand what the other person is trying to say, and most likely always assume detriment and negativity.
Yeah, I mean, we could go on about this for hours, but I'm just trying to summarize really quickly that your understanding of a statement has got to do with a lot of factors, including how much sleep you had last night, whether or not you're hungry, whether or not you're having troubles in your relationship. Everything that happens to you colors your understanding of whatever's said to you. And unless you're aware of that, and most people aren't, if you're in a negative frame of mind, you will react negatively. You'll look for the negative and you'll find it, because communication is not that solid. Verbal communication is very limited in the emotion And well, actually, let me correct that. Written communication is very limited in the emotion that it can convey. Verbal communication is up to 80%, especially if you're face to face or at least Zoom calling or whatever. You can see the person, whether they're smiling, whether they're frowning, whether they're sort of leaning into the camera and getting all intense, or they're sitting back and looking relaxed. You get a lot of information that isn't part of the verbal communication. Now, if you're communicating between species across huge distances, you are not going to have all that extraneous information. And if you're not used to the context of the speaker, because they're a different species with a different situation, whatever they're saying may mean absolutely nothing to you, or you may create a context which is completely what they didn't intend. So like diplomats are trained in this. They're trained to understand the context of the people they're talking to and try and present the information in a form and a context that will convey the meaning they wish to convey to the other party. Now, the onus is on the speaker to convey the information in a way that the listener can understand and accept in the form in which it was intended.
Yeah.
And most people are too lazy to do that. if you're not like a translator or a diplomat or a public speaker, you are not trained in that part of it. Most people have no freaking clue. They just say what's coming out of their brain, and oftentimes it has no context at all, or the context is so light that the other person misses it entirely because they're tired, or they're hungry, or they're dealing with small children at home, or they've got a stomach ache, or they're distracted by their phone, or there's a million problems that can screw up your communication. I mean, a lot of people like to talk because they like the sound of their own voice, and a lot of what they're saying is superfluous. And there's a lot of people who pretend to listen. They will stand there and they'll be listening to you, but they get distracted really easily. And then you're halfway through explaining something that you thought was really interesting, and they get completely distracted and just forget that you were talking because they're tired, or they're hungry, or they're dealing with little kids at home. Yeah. People are fallible. People are hugely fallible, and that makes communication hugely fallible. So it's just one of the things we have to deal with.
I always feel that the best chance that we have at 100% communication, maybe. Notice how I used the maybe in there.
Oh yeah, it's a big maybe.
Yeah, it's a big, huge maybe. It's sometime in the future when we actually can connect our brains and we don't use words for thoughts. The reason why I said maybe is for the same reasons you just spoke about.
Well, I can tell you one thing right now. You'd never be connecting your brain to Giancarlo.
No.
You'd know better than that, wouldn't you?
I wouldn't do that to myself.
Me, on the other hand, I'd probably try it. But you, nah. You're not doing that.
You'll try it once to say, you did it.
Yeah, I will.
You got that badge of honor.
Well, you know what he and I are like. We'll try one up each other.
So, yeah, what I was saying is the reason why I said maybe is because of the same reasons that you spoke about, and how even to myself, if I'm able to record those thoughts and then play it back in my brain when I am tired, when I am hungry, when I'm dealing with kids at home, the experience will be very different than the experience at the time that I thought those thoughts that were recorded. And again, we're talking, a thought experiment here for a future that may never come. But I still believe that would be the chance that we have at a highest level of communication when we're able to transport our thoughts.
Well, it's not even a problem of thoughts between people. I reckon that if I went back to my teenage self and let my teenage self see what's going inside my head right now, my teenage self would probably cark it. I'd probably just drop dead because they go, "That's me." You think all that stuff? My God, they would not recognize. People change. It's
Yes.
basically my point. People change, and that's one of those things about communicating within a relationship, like you were talking about before, with being one half of the partnership with your other half, your wife or your husband or whatever. People change. What was before may have changed and morphed into something, so it's not that anymore, or feelings may have grown and you may be closer than you were when you started out.
Mm-hmm.
These things happen and people change. And you can't say, well, you're not the person I fell in love with 20 years ago. No shit. They're 20 years older and they've changed.
Yeah.
But the whole thing, and this comes back to the whole importance of communication and context within relationships especially, is that if you want to grow together, you have to communicate. You have to communicate at a base level which is authentic and isn't dancing around points that people find difficult, and isn't, well, I don't want to have to communicate with this person at that level, therefore I will go and seek things outside my marriage. No, that never works.
Yeah.
That never works. You're either in a relationship with that person and you tell them everything and you grow with them, or get the hell out. Don't do this half-ass crap. It
Yeah.
will just destroy you.
Yeah, and I can see how people are lazy. I've seen multiple examples where one half of this couple, it could be the male, could be the female, could be they say something to their partner, assuming that they will get the underlying context.
Because you've been partners for so long, they just should get it.
To me, that's number one, lazy communication, and you're not even trying.
Yes.
Communication, you are a half of a whole. Especially the longer you are with that person, the more a whole you are, right?
The more integrated you are with them.
Exactly. So it makes sense that you want to, and I'm not saying this because it's typically what you would say. I'm saying this because if you are one half of a whole person, you need full communication, and verbal communication is faulty. So you want to over communicate to try to see if the other person gets the whole point. You don't want to say half the information and assume that, like one example that I see this on occasion with marriages of friends, where the woman said, I got mad with him because, he never takes out the garbage. That's an example of thing. But I bet you anything, if you get closer to that and you have a full communication instead of assuming, instead of, implying things. And this goes both ways. I've seen it both ways. You will have a better result instead of assuming that the other person should get what you want them to understand. Again, the reason for this is because communication as it stands today, it's lacking. Verbal communication, it's solely on interpretation. And like you said, Ray, interpretation is very lackey if you're tired, if you're hungry, if you're dealing with stuff. So I don't know if I want to say the message I'm trying to say here is attempt to communicate better.
Yeah.
Never assume, and that's, I guess, a fair statement. Never assume anything, but never assume that the other person will get half the communication that you're trying to deliver.
Assume makes an ass out of you and me, is the old saying, and it's very accurate.
Correct. So I know we might be bothered because we have to work at it. We have to like do extra work to try, but uh, we are all different. We perceive the information different. We interpret the information completely different. So what you think that might be something clear to you, which would be clear, it's understandable. You can have a certainty that the other person will miss some of the information, and it would not be as 100% clear as you think it would be. Because
And
the
it
other
also it also depends if the person is an emotional thinker or a logical thinker. I mean, I appreciate, I wouldn't say every day, but quite regularly, that my wife is a scientist as well, because I do know that there's logic in there. And if I give her a logical reason for something, she's not going to just argue it on the case of, I feel like I don't want to do that, or I feel like that's not right. I don't get that from her. I get a lot of silence, which is, I don't want to agree with you, but I'm not going to say it. But, at least logic gets somewhere. So I appreciate that. But, people who are very emotionally driven, they'll just feel something and that will be their reality, and makes life very difficult to get along with them because they don't do things logically. So you can't necessarily understand the whys and wherefores of their actions. So
Yeah. So, the reason why I'm bringing all this up, there's a specific reason for this, is to bring it back.
are we actually getting back to the movie? We'll be way out here.
Yeah, the reason why I say that there's a logic to my madness here. The reason why I
Okay.
went all the way out there is to bring it back to the film. Communication is faulty. Within humans is faulty. Not necessarily from someone from another country, someone that speaks a different language. No, we're talking about even someone within the same geographical location, someone within the same family is faulty.
Oh yeah.
Now introduce an alien. And you understand now my point. So let's go back to the original question that we digressed from.
I think I've forgotten it. Just that long ago.
I wanted to talk about the games, and it's a source of nostalgia for me. So at the beginning of the movie, the first method of alien attack that we see happens in Guam, and that was Galaga, right?
Yeah.
So again, if you're not familiar, you can find tons of videos out there. You can even download it on your phone, and you can play Galaga.
But it's the 1987 version. It's not the
Yeah,
it's not the
unfortunately,
original.
yeah, it's not the original, but you get a sense of what it is. I kind of like what she said. Also, you mean like the Siggy Saggy? Remember the situation room? Is a what was it that he said? Yes, a snippet is snubby.
Yeah. Does she get to speak twice? She's not even sitting at the big kids table.
I love how there's snarkiness between the two of them. I think it makes it worth it because she won't stop either.
Well, he did have a good point.
Yeah.
She was being somewhat snobby in a certain sense of the
Or
word.
she couldn't, and which makes it a lot funnier that she's able to admit to herself towards the beginning of the film when he tried to kiss her by not saying anything. That speaks volumes of a person that by not saying anything in response to his comment, like if I was a millionaire, you would have kissed me. That because many people don't do that. You just go in the contrary right away because you don't want to admit it. She was the bigger person, I think, in my opinion, by keeping quiet and admitting that was kind of true, and she's still thinking about it.
Well, he could see the look on her face. She wanted to say no, but then he said, "Well, I'm sorry. I'd love to stay here and watch you lie about your response for a few minutes, but I have to go. The big man has called me." When he says the big man, he means the president of the United States.
It is filled with moments like that, especially when they finally get to the White House. It's kind of, I was like, I remember the first time that I heard this, when I first watched this, and again, every time that I watched after, including today when I watch it with my wife, I get the big gasp when he gets to the doors of the White House and said, "Hey, I forgot this guy's name, the guard. There's a woman following me. I think she's going to assassinate the president." That was
Get your billy club out and go for it.
that was not nice.
No, it was not.
My God. But
And then when they got in further, and she's like, "See, I'm going to the Situation Room. Like, I'm important." And he says, "Sir, the president will see you in the Oval Office." And he goes, "Oh, the Oval Office. Wow, I must be more important than you." Freddie, could you keep the riffraff out, please?
I love it. I love it. And this film is filled with moments like these. It's so much fun. But to go back to the method of attack for the aliens, which I find very clever, very refreshing, that we have an alien attack film that uses video games as a method. The second was in India, and the Taj Mahal, I believe, right? Was it? Yeah. And that one, I don't know why it eluded me as to what, and it makes sense now, thinking in retrospect, what game was attacking the Taj Mahal? And you had a really good point when we were talking in the pre-show, because it's actually Arknoid. Small pause, go on YouTube, Arknoid, and then come back.
But there's two issues with it.
Well, it was sideways.
Yes.
You said it was sideways, and that makes sense to me as to why I had such a hard time recognizing which game that was. Did you have the same problem, or were you not?
Well, I didn't actually recognize what game it was. I thought maybe it was Pong.
That's what I thought initially, but the problem is I played Pong because it came with my Atari Video System 2600. But I remember, Pong, every time you look at Pong, and I invite the audience to Google Pong, is always a triangle. And although it was kind of like a triangle, I remember very clearly the circular and in the kind of balls at its end. So I remember that, and I was like, it could not be Pong, although it is the same thought behind, kind of. Well, not necessarily, but it's kind of like the same. But when you mention that is Arknoid sideways, I'm like, there you go. That's the reason why I couldn't recognize it, because it is up and down, not side to side, like we see it in this film. Which makes sense. If you want to attack a building, they would have to be side by side so it can attack it.
Well, my brain's very sort of object orientated, so I can imagine something and spin it around in my head. Back when I was a teenager, I could imagine like the design of a starship and actually close my eyes and spin it around in my head like you would in a sort of like
VR.
Yeah, like in a VR, if you had a model and you wanted to look at it at all different angles. I could do that in my head when I was a teenager, not so much now. But I had very visual imagination. And so it doesn't bother me too much if things have been rotated or whatever. I quickly pick up on what it is because my brain can just quickly rearrange things to match up to sort of memories and understandings of other things that are in different orientations. So that didn't bother me too much. What bothered me was that Arkanoid was 86 and this was supposed to be 82.
Yes. And we were talking about that in the pre-show. We were trying to rationalize. It would
That's
make
why I thought Pong, because
Yeah.
Arkanoid was later.
I like to think, and let me know if you kind of agree or maybe don't agree with this. I like to think that the aliens found the initial communication that was sent in 82 and since they became aware of us, they have kept contact with the planet since. And if I think that, it makes a little bit more sense in my
Yeah,
head.
definitely.
But again, there's no indication in the film that that was the case. So, yeah, that was my story about the second attack. It was kind of bugged me. When you recognize something and you can't put a finger on it. That's
Mhm.
that's why it was bothering me. It's like I
Well,
know.
I'll give you another example. You will see in several scenes in the big climactic battle in Washington D.C., you will see a kid on a bicycle throwing papers.
Paperboy. I
That's
played
right.
that.
April 1985 was when that was released.
Oh wow.
So
Yeah.
that's another one that wouldn't have made it into the 82 list. And I'm sure there are others. I think
Yeah.
Joust was in there as well. Remember Joust?
Yes.
I think Joust was in there on the bird with the jousting. What are they called? Lance, the
Lance. Yeah.
jousting lance on the flying bird, and that was probably after 82 as well. So I think they were referencing just arcade games from the 80s. I don't think they were specifically keeping it to 82 and before. Which these aliens have been traveling towards Earth for who knows how long, number of years. They would have picked up other transmissions, and they may have specifically referenced anything that was pixelated and looked like a game that matched what they were using as the declaration of war. So I could see them picking these up as well. But of course, these were all Easter eggs and throwbacks, and they were all there for nostalgic value. So I'm not faulting them particularly.
One game that I think, and I might be wrong here, but I think it was created. Was it created for the film? I might be wrong here. Is Dojo Quest a thing? And the reason why I'm wondering this is because I never heard of it.
No, it was created for the movie.
It was created for the movie.
Yep.
It's
I read
actually
that somewhere.
it's actually on the Amazon App Store now.
Is it?
Dojo Quest app on Amazon App Store. So I guess
Somebody decided to make it a thing. That's happened before.
yeah, it seems like it would be a cool game. I would play it, but I never heard of that, so I believe that was made for the film. So the third attack is, I believe, Centipede
Yes.
in London.
Of which Sam Brenner was the world champion in 82.
I would have to say that scene where he saw the army losing and he just grabbed one of the light guns and started, quote unquote, playing was one of the coolest scenes I've seen in this film.
Yes.
I mean, there's been, aside from the Donkey Kong at the end, but the scene paints it's kind of like what we were talking about earlier when the message of the film says that, it doesn't matter how of a mundane talent you have, there's a reason. It paints them in a different light in this scene. And it's the coolest thing. And that leads me to another thing that I was going to say, that the entire film also plays the nostalgic using its music.
Oh, yes.
And I really appreciate it for that. Going all the way from game sounds that you're familiar with actual music and songs from the 80s. And I love it for it. I don't know. Every time I watch it, every time I watch this film, it's just pure fun, and I just get all excited, and my nostalgic fluids are flowing, and it's just that massive explosion. And I don't know if you had the same. Well, you mentioned it was the experience for you wasn't the same the first time to the other times you watch, or did I misunderstand that part?
Oh no, it hits my nostalgia button pretty damn hard every time I watch it. I mean, I've watched it twice in the last week and enjoyed both of them immensely. And I've noticed things on each watching something different. It's one of those jam-packed with Easter egg kind of shows.
Yes.
But I just wanted to go back to that scene you were talking about. Excuse me. The scene where he grabs the light cannon and starts wailing on the centipedes. This movie shows for somebody who's attempting to write stories that have those feel-good moments, those payoff moments. They basically set the character of Sam Brenner up as a loser. He had he believes he had one shot at being a world champion, and he came in second, and that basically set the course for the rest of his life. And he would be a loser for the rest of his life. And he made that into a self-fulfilling prophecy. Every time he tried to do something, he just gave up near the end. He just decided he was a loser, and that's what he was going to be. And that was all subconscious, basically. And they set all that up over and over and over again. But then it pays off with these little flashes of brilliance in that he says, I've got these skills that are completely useless in the real world. Except when the world is being invaded by retro gaming aliens. So it's a very specific niche, but it's the one that's in the movie, so it pays off. And that dopamine hit that you get from that scene where he says, we're about to lose the last battle. The world's going to end. I have to do something about this, and I'm the only one who can. Grabs the gun and starts to win. And it's when the soldiers are saying, you can't do this. You don't have the right to hand out weapons. This is a military thing. And the president turns around and says, let the nerds take over. And anybody who's ever been called a nerd at that point in the show is like, yeah,
it's our time, baby.
That's our time. Yes, exactly. And then said nerds save the day, which is, what you've always wanted to do as a nerd, but, video gaming doesn't really qualify as saving the planet until it does in this movie. So yeah, that's sort of like the setup. Guy's a loser. All he can do is play video games. He'll never achieve anything. And then he saves the planet because there's a very specific set of circumstances, and this is a comedy. So no one would ever expect a video gamer to save the planet. Having said that, then we look at our back catalogue at The Last Starfighter, and it's not the only time it's happened.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And not only that, but the version of the game is the version that he's the expert on.
That's right.
So it's well, and yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, they build them up for that moment, and that's why you had that dopamine full injection.
Yes.
when you see this scene. It's the coolest thing ever. I really, really enjoyed it. So the fourth method of attack was pac-man.
Yes.
And I remember when I first saw this for the first time, I was in disbelief. And I don't know why, because it doesn't, I guess I was just not expecting it. They actually got Toru Iwatani and if you're familiar with that name, then you know his creation, um, Pac-Man, and it's the funniest thing ever. I watched it today, and even my wife got a chuckle at that, where he's the creator of Pac-Man. They got they got him for this film.
I got some
Oh,
bad news for you.
no?
That wasn't actually him.
Oh, okay.
Well, according to what I've read, it's not him. So
I put it
Toru Immortati was played by, where is it? I know I read it here somewhere.
I thought, oh my god, that's a big
I
surprise
well,
from the
Serena Williams was played by Serena Williams.
yeah, Martha Stewart was played by Martha Stewart. Oh
Yeah.
god, that scene was hilarious.
Where is it? Oh god, it wasn't it. They set that one up beautifully too.
Oh, yes.
Um,
Oh, yes. Well,
God damn it,
while
where
you
is it?
look that
Oh,
up oh, you
Professor Iwatani was played by Dennis Akriyama.
oh, okay.
So yeah, that wasn't the original, because I would have thought he'd be like ancient by that stage.
Well, I digress because the point that I was trying to make, which that actually surprises me because, for some reason I thought, and, my fault on that for not looking at the IMDb. I usually do look at that, but it's one of those things that you take and forget. But the point that I was trying to make is the scene where he gets out of the car. And if you've seen this film by now, you know which scene I'm talking about. Where Pac-Man is coming at the ghost. Great use of cars, though. I can visualize the Mini being Ghost on a video game. I don't know if that's your thought, Ray, but I thought it was the perfect little car for that scene.
Oh,
I mean, I
definitely.
guess you could pick the Fiat 500, right? But I don't think they look quite as Ghost as the Mini does. So I think it was a perfect casting. But I digress again. The scene that I'm talking about is when the actor that plays the creator of Pac-Man gets out of the car. And it's like, how he called him Hito. Hito is a good boy. He's so he has all this um tender words for his creation and how he's never done anything bad. He's just misunderstood. And then he gets out of the car and everybody says like, "Ah," and because in fact it's very wholesome moment between the supposed quote unquote creator and its creation. Um, and at the end, when he goes and tries to touch the Pac-Man to try to get him to stop, which by the way, I also thought that he should have known this is not his creation, but of a creation of the aliens. But then again, that was thrown off case with that lady. I forgot her name now.
Violet.
uh, Lady Lisa. So that was thrown off case by Lady Lisa because of the love, you know, where where Luffalo declares love for her, and she actually joined him. But um, he actually bites the quote unquote creator's hand and pixelates it. And what comes after that? Not wholesome.
No.
Not wholesome. All of a sudden, he is a monster, and you gotta kill him. I thought that was well played, because it was at least to me, and I want to hear your thoughts on that, Ray. At least to me, that moment was pure comedy, and
Oh,
it was
definitely.
it was built up perfectly to that moment. I know it was a very small moment, but it actually paid off. What do you think about that scene in particular?
Oh no, I love that scene. Well, there was a lot of script flipping going on around that point in the movie. Obviously, people play Pac-Man as the Pac-Man, so having him as the bad guy flips the script in that the good guys are the ghosts, and nobody's ever really thought about that, I suspect, when they've been playing Pac-Man, because they always play the Pac-Man. And the ghosts are always chasing you around, and the only time you get back at them is when you've had the power pill. But to have, you know, the ghosts trying to save the world and Pac-Man trying to destroy it was a complete 180 reversal. And then, you know, having a character who was the creative Pac-Man go up there and say, a lot of people talk about their creations as their children, because they've spent so much time thinking about them and supporting them and answering questions about them if they've become, you know, household names. And Pac-Man is a household name, at least, you know, for the last 40 years or so.
yeah.
And to, you know, be that creator of Pac-Man, and you'd often think of it as your offspring, as your child, as your creation. And that's what they were going for with the whole, he was there as one of the ghost cars and he got out and tried to talk to Pac-Man. Now, this is the problem with people and their creations. When they see that creation made, I say made flesh, but it wasn't made flesh so much as made real, made physical within the real world, they mistake it as being the thing that they've created, but it's not. Qbert was not Qbert. Pac-Man was not Pac-Man. The dog with the chicken was not the dog with the chicken. They were energy creatures from another planet that happened to look like that and in some cases behave like that. But they were not that. And that's where they made their mistake. Pac-Man was not Pac-Man. Pac-Man was an alien warrior. Just happened to look like Pac-Man. And that's where it fell down. And that's what made the comedy. Comedy is about misunderstandings. All comedy is about misunderstandings. They play into it. They double down on it in anime all the time. But if there was never any misunderstandings, there would hardly ever be any comedy.
Well, that's why we
Because
have chaos.
misunderstandings are funny.
That's why we have chaos.
Exactly. But you know, that's why this scene was funny, because it was a complete misunderstanding. This man was trying to treat an alien warrior as his own creation, but it just happened to look like that.
Yeah.
If it had been like a Tyrannid from 40K, he would not have got out of the car. And let's just say that Ludlow would not have had babies with Lady Lisa if he still looked like Qbert.
Yeah. Well, that's another part, and that's the reason why I brought it up. Is that the fact that, you know, his declaration of love actually worked on something that is not what he's experienced. This is an alien warrior.
Mm-hmm.
So the only thing that might make it make sense to me in my head is going back to a conversation that they had with Qbert when he said that they were happy until they received the message, and then everything became horrible. That maybe, I mean, we have proof in Qbert there are aliens that think different from the rest. So the only thing that makes sense based on that conversation is that uh he, you know, Ludlow, he got lucky because Lady Lisa was one of those aliens, just like Qbert, that was thinking different from the rest. Does that make sense to you? I mean, because as soon as that moment happened, I said, yeah, he's gonna die. And I was really surprised when he didn't. Based on, you know, if you take the Pac-Man scene as the basis for this. So were you thinking about does that make sense to you, basically, what I just said about taking Cuba in consideration. There's obviously aliens that think different from the rest of them.
Yes. They're at least individuals, and they have some sort of individual context. It's not a hive mind by the looks of things. I'm just doing a little bit of research while you were talking there. So the creator of Pac-Man, Toru Iwatani, is actually in this movie, but not as himself. He has
Was
a
he the
cameo.
one? Was he the
He has
one
a-
fixing the machines?
Yes.
I knew it. I was like,
He was squatting behind an arcade machine, just putting the back cover back on, as if he'd been in there fixing it. That was the actual Toru Iwatani, creator of Pac-Man.
I think that's where my confusion came from, because in my brain, when I saw this for the first time, don't ask me why. For me, that person squatting and the person on the goes was the same person. Doesn't make any sense because they don't even look the same.
Well, Toru Iwatani may not speak very good English, and they needed somebody who could speak the
Yeah.
lines for the English audience. So I
Yeah.
suspect that's why they replaced him. I mean, the guy was in the movie. He could have
Yeah.
played himself, except he couldn't speak English, I suspect.
That would make a lot of sense. But that actually brought in that answers my question as to my misunderstanding there.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I see it now, and I see they are different.
It was
But
bugging me. That's why I had to do some research.
when I saw that for the first time, in my mind, they were the same person. I don't know why, but maybe it's just that first impression when you watch a film for the first time. I don't know.
There you go. I've answered the question.
Thank
Yes,
you.
he was in the movie. No, he wasn't playing himself.
Awesome. Okay, so I think we have reached a moment in this episode where we ask the final question.
That question.
And if you're new to the show, that question is, what was the last impression of this film? This usually is a combination of your experiences throughout the many rewatches, including your first of the thing we're covering. I also sent an invitation out to the audience to answer that question as well. There's different ways that you can do this. If you are watching on YouTube, all you got to do is just pause this momentarily, go down to the comment section, and just type in your thoughts, and we'll be responding to those. If you are listening on the pod, I'm sure that most pods nowadays have an option to put comments on the episode, along with your 5-star reviews. But the easiest way, more direct way, aside from our preferred way of the YouTube comment, is if you are listening to the pod and you're not listening to if you're not watching our YouTube channel, it is to join our Discord. So you can join in and give us the answer. What was your last impression of the film from the last time you watched it all the way down to the very first time that you watch it? So, don't know, Ray, if you want to go first, if you want me to go first.
I can go first if you want.
Okay.
So I still don't quite have an answer to my original question, why this movie didn't go better, didn't do better. It seems to have all the ingredients necessary: good writing, great acting. I wouldn't call it an all-star cast, but it's got a cast that's very serviceable. There's cameos, there's alien invasion, there's comedy, there's love stories, there's things that are really nostalgic. There's lots of video game references, lots of Easter eggs. There's payoffs to the setups. There's good character arcs. It seems to have everything it needs, and yet I cannot explain why it didn't quite come together to make a blockbuster. I just don't quite understand why. And I'm not just saying that from a, well, I really love this movie and you should too, and I don't know what's wrong with you kind of perspective. I'm of sort of a mixed mind about this movie. There's scenes in it that I really appreciate and I get that dopamine hit from, and I really enjoyed. I enjoyed the comedy. I mean, like I've said, I'm not the biggest Adam Sandler fan that there was, but I really appreciate him in this movie. He seemed to hit that really good dynamic of funny, but not pushing it so hard it got annoying, which he can do in some of his movies. That's my personal opinion. Your mileage may vary. But I really thought he hit his stride in this movie. It went really well. And I really can't fault the movie in any great shape or form. It's very, very serviceable. But it doesn't quite seem to have that sort of lasting dopamine sort of feeling that you get when you come out of a movie and it's really pumped you up and it's made your day and you think about it for days afterwards. I mean, individual mileage will vary. Again, I'm sure Robert's thought about it a lot. And I have thought about it a lot too, but it doesn't quite have that tang to it in movies like Star Wars, Aliens, Superman. There's a huge long list. Alita Battle Angel, especially for me. Every time I see it, it winds me right up and I'm like pumped for ages. This movie doesn't quite do that for me. But it's not a bad movie. It's quite a good movie. But it's just, I don't know if it's missing something or the combinations weren't quite there. But I still think it's worth watching. I still think it's worth an hour and a half your time, or a bit longer.
I mean, you watched it twice for this recording.
Yeah.
So
I watched it twice this week and I've watched it before and I
Mhm.
didn't dislike it. But there just seems to be a little something missing and I can't explain to you what it is. If anybody can tell me, or if you've got an idea, write it in the comments. Jump on our Discord and let me know because I want to know. It's bugging me. But I do like this movie. But there just seems to be something missing. And I don't know what it is. And I'm really disappointed that I feel like that because I really like the movie. It's got a whole bunch of stuff in it that I really appreciate. So I can't explain it. I'm lost.
Okay. I guess I'll go next.
Sure.
I can see your point. Obviously, my experience is a little different. I can see your point in a way that, after you mentioned it does make sense. So you're not alone there. However, I feel that the reason why I rewatched this film as many times as I have is because I'm searching for the feeling that I get while I'm watching it, if that makes any sense. I see how you're saying that the feeling doesn't stay like other, like I share your sentiment with Alita, right? It just pumps you up. It keeps you going for, weeks, whatever. This movie doesn't quite do that.
Yeah.
So but it does while you're watching it, to me at least. So the only explanation that I have for my mini rewatch is because I'm kind of searching for that feeling that I always get when I watch that doesn't stay with me, if that makes any sense. Now, this film, as I alluded to at the beginning of the episode, I appreciate it for many, many reasons. One of the reasons, and you probably heard me say this in previous episodes, I really appreciate when there's an IP in science fiction. Number one, that uses comedy. We need more comedy in sci-fi. And I really, really appreciate when we have comedy sci-fi out there. It is good to take it serious. Hard sci-fi typically does that. But it's nice once in a while to have comedy within the IP, which we don't have much. It's not frequent. So, number one, I appreciate it for that. Number two, I appreciate this film for taking a unique stand on its story. It is very refreshing, like I said earlier in the show. When you take a sci-fi IP that has done something that has not been done before. I really, really like that because it gives you a fresh story among all the multiple sci-fi stories that we are used to. So I really appreciate that on this film. 3, I appreciate when a film ticks as many boxes as this film has ticked. We have talked about other films, if you go down to our back catalog, they have, I'm not saying this is the only film that has done this. I'm saying this is one of those films that does this. And whenever you have a film that tick all those boxes, there's a plus in my book. It ticks obviously the sci-fi fan. It ticks a subset of the sci-fi fan that likes alien invasion movies. It ticks the retro gamer aficionado or the person who loves retro gaming. It ticks the
What
box.
you mean? You mean Halo or Battlefront?
That made me feel cold. It ticks the boxes of people that experience what it was to visit an arcade in my time. And if you notice, I can go on for days. This movie has ticked so many boxes. And usually, when you have something trying to accomplish so many things, it fails overall. And this film was able to tackle all those and still make an amazing film. I really enjoy this film. Every time I watch it, I get that dopamine shot. And like I said earlier, this is the reason why I keep on rewatching this film because I really, really enjoy it. I can definitely say there's going to be many more times that I watch this film. So if you have not watched this film, number one, I recommend you watch it at least once, especially if you follow any of the ticks that I mentioned. You are going to do yourself a favor by watching this. If you enjoyed it.
Can I give a couple of other references while you're at it?
Oh, yes, please.
If you liked Ready Player One,
Yes.
or Free Guy, you
Mhm.
will like this movie, or Galaxy Quest. You will like this movie. So if you're a fan of any of those movies, and did you hear Spielberg's working on Ready Player Two?
Oh my God, I can't wait.
Yeah,
We got to
it'll be
cover
good.
that one.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, we've already covered Ready Player One, so you can go back to our back catalog and check out what the thoughts were on that one. But yeah, those sorts of movies, this is right up that alley.
Yeah. So, yeah, I really want to hear from you. If you watch this film, I want to hear your thoughts. If you haven't watched this film and you listen to us first and then watch the film, which I seen happen, I want to hear your thoughts. And obviously, if you started watching us, you pause, you watch the movie, and then came back to us, I want to hear your thoughts. I want to hear, especially if you are within any of those ticks that I mentioned, what was your last impression of the film? What was the one thing that grabbed you from the film? Because I'm kind of curious. As you know, if you listen to the show long enough, you know that I'm uh, curious about the different perspectives. I believe that we grow as a person by listening to different perspectives. Even if we agree or disagree, it's okay if I disagree, but I become a better person by listening to your perspective. I want to hear your perspective, especially if you are within that subset of any of the text that I mentioned this film covered. And just put it in the comments and let us know what you feel. But overall, this is a great film, and I strongly recommend it if you are at least a sci-fi fan. And I believe that is my last thought.
Cool.
So, can we move on to the
Yeah.
The science in sci-fi.
I had a really good hard think about what to put in this section for this movie, because obviously energy beings that decide to take on the shape and function of video game characters that can then interact with solid matter and pixelate it. He's a little bit out there, but it really is kind of interesting. I mean, the first time
real?
I don't think so. The first time you see the Gallagher alien zoom down the road toward Anderson Air Force Base and the sign starts to pixelate, you go, oh shit, this looks bad. I mean, they're basically changing the form of matter around them, which is hard to deal with. And their teleportation beam, which basically pixelates you, it sucks you up like a big Dyson vacuum cleaner. Holy crap!
Wouldn't that be painful?
I'd say so. I mean, yeah, I'd be a bit concerned about it. So anyway, bit hard to kind of relate to real world. Just a touch. So we thought we'd lean into a couple of other real world topics that are sort of somewhat peripheral to this movie. The first one I wanted to hit on was why are video games going backwards in terms of graphics? Now, that is a question. Way back here. I got a billion tabs open. That's why I'm having trouble finding it. The question here, this is from Quora, and it says, why are video games going backwards in terms of graphics? And kids seem totally cool with it, even though for a kid, there is no nostalgia component. That was the question. And there's a lot of really interesting responses to this along the lines of why the video games look like they're going backwards. And the fact of the matter is that LCD screens display images differently from CRT screens, because CRT screens actually have pixels and LCD screens don't really have them per se. You're not lighting up different color dots within the screen using an electron beam. It's a completely different technology, and therefore it displays differently. So if I let's see if I can make this readable. Okay. So now you guys who are listening to the pod, you'll just have to accept what I'm saying as read, but I'm showing it on the video version of this, which will be dropping in a month. So if you're really keen on seeing this, just wait a month and then check our YouTube channel. And while you're there, you should subscribe, because we need subs. Thanks. So if you have a look at these two images side by side, the one on the left is from a CRT screen, and the one on the right is taken from an LCD screen. And you can see that the pixels exist as part of the screen on this side, and so it softens the edges. You don't see the hard pixelated edge, because it's softened by the dots that exist as part of the screen. But over on this side, it's all really out there in your face and obvious, because that fly screening, as it's sometimes called, doesn't exist. It's not there. So we can get really pretty and smooth images on CRT screens, but if they're not at the same on LCD screens, but if they're not at the same resolution, And that's what pixelation is. Pixelation is a lower resolution image shown on a higher resolution screen. That's when you see the pixelation. Now, the pixelation was part of the CRT screen. It's not part of the LCD screen, and therefore it becomes way more obvious. So this image on the left, and it's a picture of a woman with very anime hair, she looks a lot softer because of the fly screening effect of the actual pixels on the CRT screen. But on the right-hand side, there's no pixels and pixels of the screen, and therefore all the pixels of the edges of the image become hard and more evident. And there's a whole bunch of examples here. If you look at the two of those, I mean, this one's nice and soft, even though it's not super high resolution, and this one just looks nyeh. And, example after example. And it's got something to do with the way your eyes interpret the image. This looks slightly blurry, but your brain just goes, oh yeah, it's slightly out of focus, but I can deal. But this just looks like a mess of pixels. And it's got to do with the way the two images are presented. These are obviously photographs taken of a screen. This is not the screen's fault. This is actually pictures of the screen. And your brain actually interprets this softer image differently from the hard image. The hard image, your brain starts looking at all the hard edges and interpreting them, whereas this actually takes it in more as a combined image, just because of the way it's blurred slightly. I mean, that looks way sexier than that, huh?
Yeah, I can see your examples here. Something that I never really thought about, but it makes sense how the brain will fill in the gaps. It's easier for the softer image than the other image just looks like a mess.
Yeah.
That's why I can't play Lunar Silver Star on my TV from the PlayStation 1.
You need a CRT, and then it'll work. But I mean, these sorts of images, when they were softer because they were on a CRT, weren't so bad. But seeing them on a high resolution LCD screen, they look terrible. Now, this is the other post in this thread that I wanted to bring up by Assistant, who's a bot. Now, I don't know if this was just run through Google and it came up with these, but this really does seem to answer the question very well. And I'll just read it out. The perception that video games are going backwards in terms of graphics can be attributed to several factors, despite the fact that kids today may be quite content with these styles. Here are a few key points to consider. Artistic choices and aesthetic trends. Retro aesthetics. Many games intentionally adopt retro graphics or pixel art styles as a nod to classic gaming. This aesthetic can be appealing and is often seen as charming or nostalgic, even for younger players who have not experienced the original games. Stylized graphics. Developers may choose stylized graphics over hyperrealism to create a unique visual identity. Games like Celeste and Stardew Valley prioritize artistic expression over cutting-edge graphics. Now, it may be mentioned down here further, I can't remember, but I think that the cutting-edge graphics are moving more into the VR realm. I mean, when you're wearing the headset and pretending like you're standing in a 3D environment of the game, that's when you want it to look as real as possible. But when you're staring at a screen, it's obvious to you that this is not virtual reality, this is a game, and therefore you're open to having different art styles. And the retro in terms of the graphics isn't so much of a problem. So I think there's actually a divide coming up between VR gamers and on-screen gamers. And all that sort of push in the late 20-teens to more and more hyper-realistic graphics, like with the last week's show, the engine that they used for that, what was it called again?
Unreal
Engine 5. Yeah, that hyper-realism is more in the VR space now. That's how I feel it's going.
I always feel like VR is the next evolution of gaming. I think honestly, eventually, everything will go, not because I watch all those animes, which by the way are really cool, where you can just lay down on a bed, put a headset on, and you're inside a game. No, but I see the trends in gaming, and I have a feeling that that would be eventually the future of gaming is VR.
Yeah. Well, I think it'll go. VR will become the focus. Will be like the headliner games, but you'll still have on-screen gamers for people that get dizzy in VR and stuff like that. There'll still be a requirement, and mobile gaming will still be a thing because if you can't be at home with your headset on, if you got to get your gaming in on the train or on the bus or something like that, mobile gaming is where it's at. So I still think there'll be a segment of the gaming populace using mobile gaming and graphics of different or lesser quality. But VR will be like the headliner stuff, the AAA games.
Let me tell you what I think it will look like, and of course, this is just my particular attempt at predicting future technologies, which I'm not an expert on. But the way that I see it is, I see, just like you said, VR being the main focus of gaming. But I see mobile gaming as an extension. So let me go ahead and paint that picture for you. Let's say you have game A that you play a lot on your VR when you're home. And you go to bed, you wake up, you got to go to work. So what you do is you get the same game A, you open it up on your mobile phone, and you can continue on the gaming. Obviously, not with the same experience, but like let's say, for example, this is a game that where let's say you're mining, right? You can continue the mining on your way to work on your phone. So by the time you get home, you put your VR, and most of the progress that you have done on your mobile phone will be there. And that's just my attempt of predicting the future. I don't know if that makes any sense to you, but that's how it is the future of gaming being.
Well, when you're trying to isolate your player segment and keep them engaged 24/7, I could see that happening.
Yeah, it makes sense monetarily also for those companies, because it brings more money in a sense that you have more eyes on game if you do it that way. Because
Or
that way,
perhaps more eyes on game hours.
exactly.
Okay, gameplay over graphics. Now, I think this is where it's at. Focus on mechanics. Many players, including kids, prioritize gameplay mechanics and storytelling over visual fidelity. Engaging gameplay and fun mechanics can make a game enjoyable, regardless of the graphical quality. Cases in point, you've got Terraria, which my son is absolutely addicted to, and he's played through multiple times already with different characters. You've got the ever popular Minecraft, which is not pretty by any shake of the lambs or what's it, but people play it to death. And you've got all the Roblox games, which I find the graphics in those games houndy, absolutely terrible. But people love them because they're hooked on the gameplay, not on the pictures.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because that is an example of my future in gaming. You could actually play that game in VR and continue your gaming on the phone, and then go back to your PlayStation 5. It's one of the examples as to why I see the future of gaming, and it's in part, you could see it in this game.
So accessibility. Simpler graphics can make games more accessible to a wider audience, including those with low-end hardware. This allows more players to engage with the game without needing expensive consoles or PCs. So basically, that's a paradigm within the game producer where, if they're starting out with a low amount of funds, they can only make a game that has low levels of graphics because they don't have the rendering power and all of the bells and whistles to make jaw-dropping, eye-popping, visually spectacular games. But I've seen lots of very pretty games that played like dogs, and I got sick of them because I just couldn't get anywhere because they didn't play very well. But then you get stuff like Minecraft, which people have been playing for decades now, literally decades, and it's still as popular as ever because it's got such engaging gameplay. And there's so many amazing things you can do with it. And it's modded to the wazoo and back. So, this is the thing that keeps games engaging. Sure, it looks pretty once or twice, but then people get over that. And if you haven't got the gameplay there to back it up, people forget about it.
Yeah.
Now, I found this one very interesting, nostalgia in a cultural context. Cultural influence. Kids are often influenced by the games that older siblings or friends play, which might include retro games. This exposure can create an appreciation for different styles of graphics. So that's sort of in a semi-generational mindset, or even in a generational mindset. If your kids are introduced to gaming by what you were playing, and you were playing some retro, they might get into retro as well. Community and trends.
I got an example for that. I used to play Lunar a lot, and my kids enjoy that game, and it's not from their generation.
Exactly. Community and trends. Online communities and platforms like Twitch and YouTube can popularize indie games with simpler graphics, making them trendy and desirable among younger audiences. So there's that whole sort of following the trends and the retro trends, like the alt trends, which people often do. And of course, online is now the word of mouth. We used to go by word of mouth. Oh, that movie was really good. I might go and see it. Oh, that game was lots of fun. Can I borrow it? And if it's really good, I might buy it myself. Blah, blah, blah. So that's what we used to do back in the day. And that whole thing happens, but they're trends on the internet. And there's plenty of AIs out there that will tell you what the current trends are. So it's not hard to find out these days, but from more of a global perspective. Technological limitations and development costs. Now, this is what I was talking about before. Creating high-fidelity graphics requires significant resources. Some developers may choose to focus on gameplay, story, or innovation rather than investing heavily in graphics. Graphics were the be-all and end-all there for 10 years-ish, where the next most beautiful game was the big thing, but it can't be maintained. The people's computers can't keep up, and the rendering systems of the companies can't keep up. It just gets too expensive.
Funny that you mentioned that, because I feel because of that reason that actually limits the audience on that game, because not everybody has the latest and greatest in computers. So whenever you're able to do something that is not demanding of the PC, you will have a lot more players, which in turn is what the gaming company wants.
And the last point under technical limitations and choices is indie game growth. The indie game scene has exploded, with many developers opting for simpler graphics to focus on unique concepts and game experiences. This has led to a flourishing market of games that may not prioritize high-end visuals. So basically, yes, these things go in and out of fashion. High fidelity, the best possible graphics experience that you could get was a thing, and it's still a thing in some AAA titles, but it's not the be-all and end-all. There's lots of other options, lots of other choices, and lots of other things that different people are doing that you can experience that may give you just as big a dopamine hit without breaking the bank on your hardware and requiring the most amazing graphics you've ever seen in the entire world. So yeah, basically you don't need to be playing a game that looks like Avatar or Battle Angel or Alita Battle Angel. You can be playing a pixelated game, preferably on a CRT because they look prettier, and have a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Awesome.
So I thought that was very interesting. Now, I did some maths earlier about some of the comments in Pixels as far as the aliens discovering our probe and deciding that the VHS tape with the gaming experiences from the 1982 World Video Gaming Championships was actually a declaration of war. Which is a bit of a stretch, but it's funny and it's sci-fi comedy, so I'll give it a pass on that. But my question was, how far did the 1982 probe get for them to pick it up? Now, it wasn't specifically stated. They just said they found the probe and they looked at the material on it and they accepted the challenge. And they sent their best warriors to us to fight 3 battles, and whoever won the most battles, if we won, our planet would survive, and if we lost, they'd destroy our planet. Seems a little one-sided in the results, but they didn't say, oh, no, if we lose, we'll blow up our own planet. Yeah, nah. Not going there. Anyway, so I did a little bit of online research, so these numbers may be a little bit soft. So forgive me on that. And of course, if you want to berate me over my soft numbers being a scientist, you're quite welcome to do so. Join us on our Discord and have a go at me, and I'll try and explain myself. But what I have here is the fastest ever Earth probe to be launched was the Parker Solar Probe. Now, obviously, the probe that was launched with the 1982 video footage in this movie was launched out, away from the sun. The Parker Solar Probe was launched towards the sun, and the fastest it has been clocked at was 394,736 miles per hour. Yeah, that's kind of fast. That's 635,266 kilometers per hour. And how they managed to do that is they did a slingshot maneuver, gravitational slingshot maneuver around Venus, which of course is the next planet closest to the sun. So that is the fastest probe that we have ever launched. The fastest thing that man has ever built is that probe. So there's a Guinness Book of Records result right there.
So I can get it.
Now, the probes like Voyager 1 and 2 that have been launched into our outer solar system, intent on leaving the solar system eventually, and they were launched in the early 70s, like 72 and 76 or something like that. They aren't going that fast. So just say our fastest probe ever, if it was launched away from the Earth in 1982, how far would it have gone? So from 1982 to 2015 is about 33 years, which is roughly 280,000 hours. If you multiply that by the miles per hour, you get a total distance of 110,526,080,000 miles, which is 177,874,483,691 kilometers. So a bloody long way, at least to us, who are used to driving, 100 miles a week or something. So 1 light year is approximately 6 trillion miles. So light travels in a year 6 trillion miles. Okay, that's a lot of miles. So it turns out that in 33 years, moving at the speed that our fastest ever thing has ever moved, it would only move 0.018 light years. And you might think, but a light year is a long way. Okay, so from the Earth to the outer edge of the Oort cloud has been estimated, because we've never been there, at about 2 light years. So the poor old probe from 1982 didn't even get out of our Oort cloud. It didn't get out of the gravitational field of our sun. It didn't even get off the block, let alone across the city.
So the aliens would have to be really close.
Yes, they would have had to been cruising past going, oh, that's a nice yellow sun. Oh, what's this thing here?
Yeah, they're definitely inside the Oort cloud.
They were pretty bloody close. Now, I mean, you can go down the Vija route from Star Trek The Motion Picture. It fell into a wormhole and popped up across the other side of the galaxy or what have you. Somehow got some extra distance out of it, got on the bus and went across town kind of deal. But no, the logical approach would have been that they either had some sort of probe ship or a scout ship or a picket ship of some description that was out near our solar system, like way outside the orbit of Neptune, which is our largest planet that we know of. Though there is mounting suspicion that there's a planet X out there somewhere, or planet 9 now, because Pluto isn't a planet. It gets confusing when they keep changing the numbers. But anyway, they would have had to pick it up because it didn't even get off the block, let alone across the city, for reference. So yeah, 0.018 light years, not even a whole light year. For reference, the nearest star system to us, the nearest star to our star, is 4.4 light years. 0.018.
Yeah.
Didn't get very fucking far. Sorry. There's a little bit of astronomical math for you. So yeah.
Yeah, it's the vastness of space. Space is big, really
big. You might think it's a long way to go down to the corner store, but that's just peanuts to space. Thank you, Douglas Adams.
Yes, thank you.
Do you have anything else to add to my ridiculously pointless math?
No, in the cosmic perspective is very depressing.
We need faster than light travel because moving around even at the speed of light, which seems ridiculous to us as human beings on Earth, it's just a drop in the bucket. It's just tiny. It's so slow. We have to go faster than light or the tyranny of distance will destroy us.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this Pixels episode. It's quite a pixelated episode of Science Fiction Remnant. We did enjoy this movie. We hope you did too. If you haven't watched it, go and watch it. It is worth watching. I mean, I know I have some niggles about how it landed, but I think overall it is really worth watching. So go and check it out. And once you've checked it out, come and check out our Discord and tell us what you thought. We'd like to know. Now, I would really like to know if you can work out why this movie didn't quite work. If you can tell me that, I'll sleep better at night. So please, if you can work it out, please come and tell me. You can do that on our Discord. Now you'll see on the screen, if you're watching the YouTube version, there's a QR code there. You scan that sucker. Now you'll need to, if you don't have it already, install Discord as an app on your computer or tablet or phone or whatever you're going to use. I have it on all of them. But once you're on there, you can then create an account very quickly and join our Discord community where we can discuss this IP and many other IPs that we're already covered in our back catalogue and any other IP that you happen to be interested in, because we're always looking for something new in sci-fi to get us tingling. So please let us know what you think about this IP and let us know what your other favorites are so we can consider them, because, you know, any sci-fi is good sci-fi and we want to know about it. And who knows, you might tell us about the next big thing. If you're hanging out on our Discord already, thank you very much for being part of our community. And remember that you get out what you put in. So don't wait for other people to start the conversation. Start one yourself. If you have a question, ask it. If you have an opinion, state it. We're not going to tell you you're wrong. We're just going to say, hey, I have a different one. And it's all good, because discussing sci-fi is what we're about. We're about breaking down silos, and we're about discussing all the cool stuff about the sci-fi IPs that we love and enjoy. Now, if you want to catch up on our back catalogue or what our currently dropped pod is, and of course the podcast comes out a month before the YouTube version does, you can catch that on sciencefictionremnant.com. That is our main portal to the podcast and also to articles written by ourselves and guests all about topics to do with science fiction and science in general. So do check those out. They're quite short reads, 4 to 5 minutes. You can fit one in during a break or at your lunch break, and it will get your thoughtful juices flowing, and you too can be a deep thinker about sci-fi, much like the people you're listening to right now, because boy, oh boy, do we think a lot about this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Now, if you think about sci-fi so much that you will write it down or draw it or do something else to do with sci-fi, or maybe you've got your own sci-fi podcast, that's awesome too. We love those as well. And there's a website that we've started called thisissci-fi.net that's for you. That's the one for the creators. It's in our early stages. So if you get on board now, you can help shape what that portal is going to become, and you can also advertise on there your little piece of the science fiction frequency that's going on in across the world and across the internet at the moment. And we'd love to have you there. We'd love to find out more about what you've been doing, and do come and join that that website and tell us all about what you've been doing, and help other people get the word out about their sci-fi creations as well. We have a Substack. Substacks are cool. You sign up to them, and you can either go in and read what's on people's Substack, or you can have it sent to your email. So you've got something quick and easy to open and read if you're looking for a sci-fi hit. So you can go onto Substack, create an account, and join up on the Science Fiction Ribbon Substack, and a whole bunch of other sci-fi ones are there, and get some more sci-fi content, because more sci-fi content is awesome sauce. We're also very busy on Threads these days. Threads is where all those people who got sick of X went. So check out Threads. It's part of Instagram. Go into your Instagram account if you have one, or if you don't, create one. And then down on the bottom left-hand corner, there's a button called Threads. Click on that one, and that will take you through to the Threads component, which is basically much like the way X is arranged, in that you can start a conversation and get people to weigh in, and there's a lot of engagement going on at Threads at the moment. So check it out. There's lots of good discussion about sci-fi, and we hope to see you there. Now, creating a podcast is not a free endeavor. It does cost a bit of money. And of course, Robert's been footing the bill for that at the moment. But if you find our content valuable to you, and you'd like to add a few dollars in there to help us out, we'd really appreciate that. We have a Buy Me a Coffee. It's on the screen at the moment. There's also a link in our podcast description. And you can go to that link, and you can donate a few dollars to help out supporting the podcast. And if you would, we'd be very appreciative. We also have a hotline. We actually forgot to mention this earlier on in the podcast, but we do have a hotline. The number is 1-305-563-6334. That's 1-305-563-6334. 334. Drop the 1 if you're in the continental United States. You can leave a message there any time of day or night, 24/7. And if you're willing, and please do mention it in the message if you are willing, then we will play it on one of our upcoming pods and talk around it, because we always love to get some feedback or some information about what you're up to do with sci-fi, and we'd love to talk about that. So do please let us know. It is part of the This is Sci-Fi initiative. So get involved in that one. Again, thank you for joining us. Hope you enjoyed this episode. We had a lot of fun. We'd love to talk to you on Discord, so do join us there. And do keep an eye out for the next episode of Science Fiction Remnant, where we'll have an awesome sci-fi IP to cover. And we hope you'll enjoy that one too. But bye for now.
Bye.